Hi, this is Damien from AtHope, and I am an axiological atheist, and I'm here with a very interesting guest. Legesse, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Damien. Thanks for having me on. My name is Legesse Allyn, and I write about ancient written texts, ancient written language, ancient language, the origin and spread of language. I write a lot about ancient Egypt and ancient Egyptian writing more recently. I started out in 1991. My grandfather's from Ethiopia, so I know Ethiopian language. And I was looking through an Egyptian hieroglyphic dictionary by Wallace Budge, and, 2-volume dictionary set. And, they say that the ancient Egyptian language is a dead language. And I was looking at words that I recognized as Ethiopian words.
Wow.
And I had I took out a highlighter because I was seeing so many words. These are Ethiopian words. I'm like, this is not a dead language. So I started highlighting word after word after word after word. And I started noticing there were some subtle linguistics involved. And I was like, oh, okay, so this word, L and R are related. Like people say, like Chinese people pronounce rice, lice. We have no sayings like that. But so there was a word, let's say, for clothing. And Egyptologists transliterated it as RBS. And I looked at the word. I know the word for clothing in Ethiopian language is looks, LBS.
Okay.
And so I said, so what's this? Why did they spell it wrong? Why did they transliterate it wrong? And I could see the hieroglyphs too. And so I did some checking. I found out linguistically aren't L and N. So I was like, okay. And so I said, okay. So as I started looking at the words, I could start doing the corrections based on some of the simple linguistics I knew. M and N are the same. M and N. Same. Right. Same basic pronunciation. So you have these basic pronunciations, but I wasn't really deep into the linguistics. For example, B, F, and W. Now, linguists know that these pronunciations are related. To me, it's ridiculous, but I saw that it was true with hieroglyphs. So anyway, it took me about 20 years to finally be able to match up enough words and correct enough words pronunciations. They generally got the meanings right. So I wrote my first book in 2009, published my first book.
Right on. What was it called?
Amarnia and Tigrinya, All Hieroglyphs for Beginners. And this is the primary book that's in most of the university libraries around the world.
Right
And
on.
so it was on 700 Ethiopian words, matched to matched to hieroglyphic words from Budge's dictionary. So I sort of learned Budge's system. So people have a misconception about Wallace Budge that it was his dictionary of his words, and it wasn't. It was basically a catalog, like a Sears catalog, of all the hieroglyphic words that had been transliterated and translated, and that he cataloged, and you can see footnotes and different notations referring back to different books or Papyrus Zabani or whatever for words in the dictionary. So I sort of learned his system as he put it in but I noticed that in the back of the dictionary, the second volume, he lists only 33 Ethiopian words that he could match to. I'm like, come on. I just matched to 1,000 words. What are you talking about? So from there, I was invited to the hallofmod.com, the forum. One of the.
And can you tell people what mod is? Because I know what it is, but could you tell people what it is?
Well, Ma'at, there's a misconception of what Ma'at means.
Okay.
But there are two basic.
Yeah, then before you say it, let me say what I think it is. So to me, Ma'at is basically wisdom or language or truth, and it has to do with, or it relates to goddesses. So it's basically women as the holders or expressors or diviners of truth. That's what I would say.
Well, that's good. There are, okay, so if we get into a little linguistics here, it only relates to the vowel. But there are two basic words for ma'at.
Okay.
There's one which is disaster. There's another pronunciation which means abundance. You know, a lot. And see, this is that T at the end. T is either feminine or it's multiple. And if you think about a female multiplies.
Right.
So T makes sense just from the basic level. T makes sense for being plural and feminine at the same time. Men don't multiply.
Right.
Men protect. Women multiply.
Right.
So, and then you have, in terms of, if you want to say knowledge and wisdom like that, you have the word matet, which is the word for writing. And it means report, to report something. So that means that writing was invented by women in marketplaces as a business language to report what occurred on the farm, what occurred in a factory, you know, whatever. You'll see models from, I think it's named Makachre, who you see these wooden models, and you might see in a fabric factory like 3 scribes, you know,
right.
3 clerks writing. There's one, 4 guys are collecting grain on a farm in buckets, and you've got like 7 people like recording what's going on. So matet means, in Ethiopian language, means report, to report something. So you've got like 3 different ways to go there. Disaster is not one you ever hear the pronunciation for,
but when you said disaster, what I was thinking, how my interpretation of the relating to women is that, to me, I was going to ask you, could it mean that if you don't follow what is true or what is accurate, there could be disaster? Do you think it could have been like a warning?
In terms of report, yes. In terms of the report, if there's a report against you, yeah, you're going to be in trouble. And in terms of matet, I'm saying, you know.
And I was going to say, that doesn't that also, or couldn't that also relate to the fact that when the Pharaoh goes and your heart is tested, that you, in a sense, what you've done in your life, like the writing or the possible disaster, as I was asking about the relating to Ma'at.
Yeah.
So I was saying, could those things what you have written, you know, it could cause disaster, like a warning again, like I was saying.
Really. Yeah, well, you know, it comes down to, okay, so let's go back to the Hall of Ma'at forum. So what they were saying to me, sort of like what we're talking about right now, they said, oh, words don't mean anything. Words don't mean anything. You got these 700 words matched to they were really mad I was correcting them. Minor corrections, but still, you know, I'm an outsider. I'm not an Egyptologist. I'm not a linguist. I'm not a scholar. I'm not a scientist. I'm not none of that. So they were upset that this outsider came in and started correcting them. And so they said words don't matter. We want to sit in a sentence.
Words don't matter? What kind of crazy shit is that?
Well, they want to find some way to discredit me. They invited me to the forum. Great reader. He posted the book. He emailed me and says, hey, I posted your book. If you want to come and join us, we can discuss your book. And I was there for 2 weeks. And this is the one thing they kept saying. They wanted me to do a sentence. And I was just like, come on, please. So that was 2009. In 2014, I was ready to publish my second book. And I wanted to do a retranslation to test if Diodorus, who I had finally learned after I published my book, wrote that hieroglyphic language was Ethiopian, that Ethiopians founded Egypt, the source of the Nile was Ethiopia, which is true. So I wanted to see if that was true. So I said, okay, if the ancient Greeks with the Rosetta Stone was anything like modern Egyptologists, then they're probably not going to do the translation from Greek into the hieroglyphic language on the stone correctly. But, you know, racism is a new concept. It's not an old concept. It's not
I
an
agree.
ancient concept.
I agree.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, there's actually murals in Çatalhöyük in Turkey, which is dated somewhere around 8 to 9,000 to 7,000 years ago, which also I think leads to some of the people that go down to become related to people in Egypt. But up there, they have pictures of people that are white or tan or whatever, and then they have people that are and they're dressed a certain way. Then there's people that are black that have like leopard skins covering their waist, and they're working together. What's that?
They're just working together.
Exactly. They're right. They're working together in a hunt, not against each other. And then they have people that are half black, half white with the leopard skin, showing that they're probably trying to reference that people mated and that they had, offspring that were mixed.
Yeah.
Racism,
yeah,
I agree. Racism is nonsense, and it's a new bullshit.
Brand new. It's brand new, 200 years old or something like that. These scholars trying to so you see I'm sorry, I lost my point. So so they said words don't matter. So I thought if the Greeks are like current Egyptologists, then they're not going to have done it right. And so I said, well, let me, because I was getting ready to do the Papyrus of Ani retranslation. If you go to papyrus.ani.com, I own the domain name. You'll see I put a little teaser site up. But anyway, so I said, before I do the Papyrus of Ani, let me do the Rosetta Stone, because we have the Greek and we have the English translation,
right,
and we know what it's supposed to say in hieroglyphs. So I said, let me do that first. So I stopped all the Papyrus of Ani retranslation and started on the Rosetta Stone. It literally took me a month, 30 days, approximately 30 days to retranslate the entire hieroglyphic portion of the Rosetta Stone.
Wow.
Because you know why? Because
No.
the Greeks did translate every single word into Ethiopian language. And I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. I say they did it 99.9% accurately. Damien, I was so blown away. I just couldn't get over it.
Wow.
And I just go ahead.
No, I said wow.
Yeah,
Sorry. Even before you, I already was assuming that you can see archaeologically that everyone always thinks of, in a sense, Egypt backwards. That somehow the further into Africa was the more new or less developed, and that the ones closer to Israel were more developed. That's complete nonsense archaeologically. Complete nonsense.
Yeah, right. Right.
No,
And
it's Ethiopia first, and then I think that culture gets influx from two other places from the north and from the west, but it's not like they are the culture. I think that they become mixed with what already is there. So I agree with you.
Yeah, exactly, and this is exactly what happened. And we can go back to the fact that our earliest fossil remains of modern, of humans. I hate to say mankind and human with the word man in there. When women
humankind,
but
yeah,
people, right? People,
yeah,
right?
people.
4.4 million years ago in Ethiopia, 3.2 million years ago in Ethiopia, 165,000 years ago in Ethiopia, and modern man all came out in Ethiopia. So I think it's just a coincidence that ancient Egyptian culture came from Ethiopia. It's just purely coincidence. I believe that. So after I did the retranslation of the Rosetta Stone, I wanted to really understand more, and I noticed that there were, in addition to the hieroglyphic, the hieroglyphic words, there were other names of Ptolemy V, and they were associated with him, or gods, or ancestors. I don't know what it was, Greeks, and Eucharistos, and words like that. So I said, well, I remember when I first tried to match the hieroglyphic language, even though I suspected it was Ethiopian language, wanted to look at other languages around the world. And I tried to match the Latin. I tried to match the Greek. I tried to match the other African languages. I tried to match the other European languages. I tried like everything, and nothing was consistent except for Ethiopian language. So here I see Eucharistos. So I see these different names, and I say, well, let me see if I could match to Eucharistos and some of these other words. And I started, and Christos is actually Gust. Christ is, it means a piece of. And even the Eucharist, it's a piece of, it's in the ceremony. Here's the body of Christ, and here is his blood. Drink some. So it's a piece. And Ethiopians have this thing called gursha, which is linguistically related, and you might see Ethiopian people feed each other, Ethiopian food, and it's called gursha. But gursha, gura, the same pronunciation, just linguistic little change. So anyway, I said, that's pretty amazing. Or pater. Pater is father. Father, pater, P-F. You see, you start seeing the linguistics. It means the same thing. Greek is father, English father, and in Ethiopian language, it's Fiter, or Fitri. Fitri is creator, or Fatera is create. I'm like, wait a minute, I shouldn't be able to match. So I did a book series. I went from English with a set of 100 words. I did a roots of Spanish with the same 100 words. I did the roots of German, and all the while, I don't know each additional language, whether I'm going to be able to match these 100 words. I did Hindi, I did Russian, I did the roots of Hebrew, I did all these 8 different languages. I just wait a minute. I said, but the question became, Damien, were these words in the European, and I did roots of Japanese and roots of Chinese with the same 100 words. I said, is it in the languages because of writing, or was it because of 50,000 years?
Well, let me give you my ideas on that, because I have ideas on that. So in the Balkans, you see the first symbolism that's like writing that matched the Sumerian. To me, it's at 7,000. At 7,000 is about the time that the Indo-Europeans start going into the Balkans by war, to conquest, the Yama culture. So to me, what happened is that then those people, I believe, went into Turkey and then migrated south. Now, I don't think that they had a full language, but they had the beginnings of language. Then I do agree with you that the Ethiopians probably took that idea and made it into a more full language. But that's why I think some of the roots stuff, and then it went backwards, because then some of the stuff from Egypt goes up into Turkey and vice versa.
Right.
So I'm not. I think the biggest thing to me is there's not a clean, clear cut, but I do agree that definitely.
There's a mixture there.
Yeah. It was definitely a mixture, but I think that it wasn't fully evolved. I believe it was begun, and then it wasn't fully evolved. That's why there's a little bit difference. I think where there's hieroglyphs.
Well, I actually believe that. Let's just say, I'm just going to throw out a number. By the way, if I haven't published it, it's just an opinion. Okay? Once I publish it, so this discussion, a lot of this discussion is going to be things I haven't published, so there are things I'm investigating right now. But let's just say 90% of the world's language is from out of Africa. Just the words have just evolved over time with these linguistic changes. Right.
And you say that at the same time that I do, right? Like, to me, it's around 100,000 or more, somewhere around there. I think that language starts. It probably was before that, but certainly I think by then in Africa, and then, like, I agree with you, sometime around 50,000, it leaves Africa and becomes other stuff. And then it's more developed when they meet the Neanderthal, there's a new need because now there's a new culture. Totemism starts, I think, because of clans. One of the things I think is because they found different people. You have people that are totally, different. They look different. Their color is different. Their hair is different. I mean, they are different. So I think that.
A couple things about that is that, yes, it started prior to 100,000 years ago. So we know through DNA research that 120,000 years people left Ethiopia and, East Africa.
Right.
I just say Ethiopia, but they left Ethiopia and went south into the southern parts of Africa. So I looked at Zulu and some other languages from the southern regions of Africa to see if I could trace them back to pronunciations of Ethiopian language, and I was.
Huh.
So now when I say Ethiopian language, because we're talking about, in terms of hieroglyphic language, we're talking about two different languages,
Right.
but two related languages.
Yeah.
Tigrinya, which is like Red Sea coastal Ethiopia, which is today independent Eritrea. And you've got inland, like Tana, Amaras, you've got the Amarnia language, so, and that's where the Blue Nile starts, from Lake Tana, and it goes south 200 miles and winds back up, goes north, and passes Khartoum, dips again, and goes into Egypt. So 85% of Egypt's water comes from there. But, so you have these two languages, but clearly Tigrinya is the mother language of Amarnia, of Amharic. So I know, because I've examined, I've compared languages, I know 120,000 years ago that the two languages were already separate, because you can distinctly see, and I'll give you an example, the word water, most basic word.
Right.
Water around the world is either based on waha, Amarnia, word for water, or mai, which is Tigrinya word for water. So you have Arabic, it's based on mai. You have, like, around the world, you have based on mai. In waha, you have water. You have ha, I believe.
No, that's interesting. You said water. Do you know that 60,000 years ago there is distinctive cultural etchings from Africa on shells, ostrich shells, that they would fill with water and bury in the ground?
Isn't that interesting? I mean, water is such a basic word, and even in Vietnamese, you have the word for cloud as water. You have, but this is from evolution. This is from 50,000 years out of. But then you look at, I was talking to, I believe it was a Turkish guy, and he was a Lyft driver. He was driving me to San Diego to my clients, and we were talking about this, and we were just so excited because the words were so related. And I said, well, what's your word for water? I always ask people, what's your word for water? And he said, tsuh. I said, tsuh. I said, what are you talking about, tsuh? I said, that's it, just tsuh? He said, yes, tsuh. I said, well, how could that have? And I thought, I told him, it either has to be mai or waha. He says, no, tsuh. I said, tell me the word for sky, word for heaven, and it's samai. See, so samai, suh. Samai is sky.
Okay.
Suh is, mai is water. So I told him, okay, so you guys in Turkey got that word from writing, because it's too short to have come 50,000 years to reduce samai to suh.
Right.
And plus, samai is sky, not water. The Indian mai is water, but samai together is sky, heaven. See, so I can see where, that's why I say, let's say 95% of words around the world come directly from out of Africa. But you can clearly see where words came from the language. I'll give you another example. They say the name for Egypt.
Yeah.
Is Misr in Arabic, right? And they say Mitzrayim in Hebrew. So we go back to, see, this is what I love about the Rosetta Stone. Damien, if I didn't do the Rosetta Stone, there is so much I would not have learned. So, okay, so Misr. Let's take off what's supposed to be im, which in hieroglyphs is always t. It's never m. Im means there. You can see this in the Rosetta Stone. Look at my Rosetta Stone translation. It means there. It's actually the word maho. Maho means within, in the middle, or something. So they use im. A lot of hieroglyphic words is just one letter.
Right.
And so one of these words that's just one letter and means within. So if you have Mitzrayim, you have somebody or something that's there. Im. So Mitzrayim. So I said, so what Mitzrayim? One day it just hit me about a year ago. It just like slammed me. I was actually going home and I just thought, and I looked on my phone and I checked the word in Hebrew and I looked at it and I looked at the Hebrew, modern Hebrew. I'm like, wait a minute. I thought back to the Rosetta Stone. They have it as Nitzel. Nitzel is the ancestors. Netzela. And Nitzel means you're independent, you're single, you're detached. So in terms of ancestors, they're dead, they're in heaven. They're detached from the world.
Right.
So let's play with linguistics here. So the thing that detaches is Netzela. Netzela. So the tsa is TS. Netzela. But they change the vowel pronunciations to just Netzel, and you have sort of like the person who's detached from the world. So the hatchet represents, in hieroglyphs, the ancestors. But it's just symbolic. It doesn't mean hatchet. It means those who are detached from the world. So what's the hatchet?
Well, I have an interesting thought about that. So you're meaning like a hatchet is in like axe, right? Because I can't see what you're talking about. So you mean...
Yeah, that's a symbol.
Okay, right. So in the Balkans again, which I told you I think is what actually led to the Ethiopians' written language, which I think that they have advanced in Egypt, but more in a different way than that happened in the Balkans. But in the Balkans, about I think it's 6,500 is the first king or first gold. Like in a grave. It's like tons of gold, and he's holding a golden handled stone axe.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah, and he has a golden penis sheath. He has golden bracelets, golden earrings. He's surrounded by a halo of gold. Oh yeah, I can show it to you. Yeah,
you're not gonna believe what the word hatchet is.
What?
I could not wait. When I finally, my ex of 10 years, she's from Eritrea. She's fluent in Amharic and Tigrinya. I only knew Amharic. She knew she was fluent in Amharic and Tigrinya. And she and I are looking at this word, and this symbol, the hatchet, and trying to figure out if it's a hatchet or a flag. When we finally came to the conclusion it was not a flag. When I got to Nitzel, understood Nitzel and I understood Netzela, I said, then what's the hatchet? Because you've got this play on words. You have this duality and tripleality of words with these hieroglyphic symbols. So I looked up hatchet. I couldn't believe it. It's Mitzrabi. Now, Mitzrabi remember, these three words are the same basic words. Mitzrabi is the hatchet.
Okay.
Netzela is to detach.
Okay.
And Nitzel is the detached. Mitzrabi. So we just start with Mitzrabi. Mitzraba. The hatchet. Mitzraba. But you can see how whoever is this woman who invented Swahili, who invented writing, she understood this. She understood linguistics. I think she was the first linguist. So Mitzraba, right? Mitzraba. So in the noun, the hatchet, it's ma, but in the detaching that the hatchet does, it changes to na. And in the detached, it's also na. So the la in matrabi, la in the noun, the hatchet, changes to la, the linguistically related pronunciation in the word, the verb, detached. And then the detached has the la. The B is totally dropped. And so then when I saw that, I knew absolutely that was a hatchet and not a flag.
Right.
But the Rosetta Stone, the Greeks understood this. There was no racism back there. There was no reason to, they just wanted the grain. They didn't care about all that stuff. They wanted Egyptian, Middle Eastern, Egypt grain. And so they wrote in the Rosetta Stone, Netzilla. So I can see that if you say Hebrew, when we talk about Hebrew, when I talk about Hebrew, I'm talking about modern Hebrew. I'm not talking about some kind of ancient Hebrew. I'm talking about
well, yeah,
modern
because to me it
Hebrew.
actually goes pictograph Hebrew, then it goes Paleo Hebrew, then from there, or something close to that.
Well, yeah, they say right, Paleo Hebrew, right?
Yeah.
So people who speak Hebrew today, who say Mutzer or Mutzering, it is actually the ancestors. It's not, and to prove it, you look at what the Greeks wrote, 196 BC in the Rosetta Stone. It's Netzilla. So when I started doing the retranslation of the Bible, one of the first things I saw was they went to the land of Egypt. No, they didn't. It's not Mutzering. It was never Mutzering. Everybody back then knew it wasn't Mutzering. Everybody knew that was Mutzira or Netzil, the ancestors. In fact, the ancestors, Netzil, and the word Ankh or Anaka is together in a sentence. I can't remember where I found it, numbers, there's multiple places, but I actually retranslated a sentence that where the two were together in the same proximity to each other that was in the Rosetta Stone. So everybody back then knew that it was not the name of Egypt. They knew. So this is another example where a word came into a language through writing and through a misconception of writing.
Yeah.
And Nazareth is the same thing. And even Greek, ancient Greek, where people, it's going to devastate people. It's going to devastate scholars. The ancient written Greek and ancient written Latin, guess what? It's nothing but the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic language. The word.
To me, I would say it's two things. I would say that, yes, I agree that Egypt was interacting with Crete. Crete is where the Mycenaean Greeks, or the Mycenaeans that then later become the Greeks, get their ideas from. But Crete got their ideas 9,000 years ago from Turkey. And I don't know when exactly, because the Minoans are not 9,000, even though genetics are that old from Turkey. But they interact a lot with the mainland. So, yes, I agree with you that there was definitely.
In terms of language or writing, or are you saying in terms of writing?
Well, language to me is not just limited to writing, but the symbols I think are older than actual like hieroglyph writing, but symbols are already there, so they already had pre-ideas before the Egyptians. But I do agree the Egyptians were traveling in boats over to Crete before the fall of the Minoans. And so I do agree that the Minoans, I think, are somewhat of people from Turkey and the Balkans and some from Egypt. But I agree that the Egyptians, to me, or like you said, Ethiopian, probably gave more of a structure to it. I think one of the reasons, to me, why 5,000 there's more structure in Egypt than a lot of other places is because Egypt becomes a full nation. That's the first thing in the entire world to do that.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the hieroglyphs is that I was finally able to connect the actual word. Once I understood the linguistics, I was able to actually connect the word. So take example, the owl. Owl, like the word muddy, which means chief. You know, you'll see like in Budget Dictionary, there are like 10 pages of the word muddy, some kind of chief of this, chief of that, chief of a cattle, whatever.
Right.
But muddy, the owl, they use mudless, and they use muddy. They use the tongue, which is mudless, which is still mud, and the owl, which is not really him. The owl can be used for him or it. Any hieroglyph can be used for the actual word or related pronunciation, because ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic writing is representation of pronunciation, not other letters.
Oh, I want to learn hieroglyphs.
Yeah, so the actual word, to prove that the owl is not an M, but can be used for it, the word is gungwa, Gungwa, Gungwa. So that shows you right there where my, the water, up, down, that symbol for water, that is M, my. But it can be used for in also. But you have to have a sentence to be able to find the right word, the right form of the word. So gungwa is the word for the Allyn, actually in, but it can be used for both. See, and this is what I appreciated about what Egyptologists were saying to me about words, because once you get into a sentence, you can figure out exactly what form of the word it is and what the actual word is. And when I did the Old Testament, I contacted Jeff Benner of ancienthebrew.org.
Yeah.
It's ancient-hebrew.org and the Ancient Hebrew Resource Center. What Jeff did was he changed coded modern Hebrew, where they changed vowels and some consonants to dots 2,000 years ago. He changed it back to the way it was written in Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, the Dead Sea is important in terms of Dead Sea Scrolls, because what were those scrolls, really? Well, Dead Sea, what was the Dead Sea? The Dead Sea region was part of Egypt. Right. And what did they write with? They naturally wrote hieroglyphs, but quick, cursive type hieroglyphs. They weren't going to drop the farm, the as a farm with the plants going. They had to do it really quick, so it made it look like a W. When I started doing the New Testament, though, I was working from the Peshitta, which is Aramaic. Well, right. They say it's Aramaic, but guess what? It's just hieroglyphs. And once I started doing that, I was like, oh, this is all the same words, same context. It's all just farm reports. I'm like, what the hell? And I was like, well, who could have done this? But before we even get to that, the whole thing with ancient Greek and ancient Latin, no, it's not separate words. It's not, when we're talking about back then, no. It is just hieroglyphic words in the style of, it seemed like each society had their own style. Like their official
right, but
style.
you're talking about the how it relates to Proto-Indo-Europeans? That you're talking about?
No. I'm saying that ancient Greek writing is ancient Egyptian, a Greek stylized form of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Well, yeah, I would agree that ancient Egypt, but the ancient Egypt does look more like Greece. I agree, but not like hieroglyphs that came later. But the most ancient.
I can read ancient Greek letters as hieroglyphs. I can read Aramaic as hieroglyphs. I can read the Dead Sea Scroll writing as hieroglyphs. I can't read the modern Hebrew so much as hieroglyphs because it's been encoded. Right. By the Masorites 2,000 years ago. But that's why I had to rely on Jeff Benner. And I contacted Jeff in November of 2017. And I said, Jeff, I did the Rosetta Stone. Here's the retranslation. I said, they did it exactly perfect. I said, I can't believe it. I said, now I want to do the Genesis and Exodus. I said, but I need to have your ancient Hebrew Torah that has everything converted back to the way it's in the Dead Sea Scrolls, because otherwise I won't be able to do that, because modern Hebrew is kind of like matching to what they say. I said, he said, within an email, within an hour, we didn't even know each other. Yeah. Jeff sent me an email back, and he said, yes. I'm like, what the hell? Because this put me in two positions. One, a position with Hebrew people, he's allowed me to do this, and he's like this expert. And I don't know how that's going to affect Hebrew people. And two, I've now got to retranslate Genesis and Exodus. I mean, because if he told me no, I would be able to say, oh, see, I can't do it. Because, Jeff said no. But he gave me permission to reprint. I mean, I published in cooperation also with the online etymology dictionary, Doug Harper. He gave me permission to reprint all of his, any of his etymologies for my Roots of Language books. So I'm used to, I publish, cooperation of Silver Publications for all the hieroglyphs. So I'm used to partnering, but this was something major to do retranslation of the Bible. And I grew up as a Christian.
Me too.
So I'm expecting it to say what it's supposed to say, like the Rosetta Stone, and I'm using the Rosetta Stone system. And I've proven that Diodorus was right, And I had identified the right language that was Ethiopian language because the Greeks translated the Greek message into Ethiopian language written in hieroglyphs.
Right.
So I don't know what's going to happen. So as soon as I started, oh my God, Genesis 1, 2, I saw boats in the harbor. I said, where the hell is the harbor? I thought the harbor was down the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aqaba.
Right. But
as I continued, I saw merchants. I saw the farm. The word for land is not land. It is farm. Everywhere you see that, it's farm. And so I'm like, and then I saw the word for God, Elohim. So here we have we got to take off. Elo. Ha is related to like Geza, house, Casa, house, Haz, house. So you can see that Ga can soften all the way down to Ha. So Elo. It said Jeff Benner had in his dictionary also the word chief. Well, chief is Alaka, or in Tigrinya, Halaka. So I see Elaha. Oh, Elaka. Okay, so this is the word for chief. And what's the word behind it? They say it means created, but it's related. It's always related, see?
Right.
So it's not Bada. We know Ba and Fa are related. It's Frey. Frey means production. So in Genesis 1:1, I see the production chief. I see the farm. I see the grain. I see the grain stuff. I see the word granary. I see the boats in the harbor. It wasn't until I was almost finished with Genesis 1 and 2 that I was talking to my friend Iris in Israel. She lives in Tel Aviv. And she said, what's your weather like today? I told her, and we try to be really smart guys, right? We try to be like, we're smart. So I Googled without her knowing Tel Aviv weather. I saw Yafo, Tel Aviv. I'm like, but Yafo, I saw that as the word for granary, one of the two words for granary, which is kofo. We know the and ka and ya can be related because Jesus, Jesus. Right. Jaffa, Yafo. So I said, kofo. I said, so the name Yafo, and I said, Iris, what the hell is going on? This word means granary. Yafo. She says, huh? I said, it means granary. I saw it in numbers or something like that. She says, no, come on. So I Googled.
Well, I mention something you said because you use Spanish words. Do you know that some of the DNA or a lot of the DNA from the Phoenicians actually comes from southern Spain?
Well, Spanish is one of the closest. Spanish and German are the two closest languages to Ethiopian language that I found.
Right, and do you know that, speaking of those two things, do you know that from Turkey, when it passed agriculture in two ways. One was by water, and it went all the way along the coast from Greece to Italy over to Spain, and then up into Ireland and France, Brittany okay, went around that way. And it did that by like 7,000 years ago. Maybe they didn't hit Britain by 6,000. And it also went land route, went through the Balkans and went up into Germany.
Yeah. And I always say they left Africa, and my theory is they went through Spain, but DNA researchers say they went through the Middle East. But anyway, I always say they hit Germany. What today is Germany. They hit the Baltic Sea. They thought they couldn't go any further north, and so then they spread back down south. But anyway, let me finish. Oh, I can't even remember where I was. So
you were talking about I don't remember exactly. But...
So I searched Yafo. So I searched Yafo.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Egypt and granaries, because those are the three things I know. The language is Ethiopian, so it's Egypt. I know the word. I don't think I've seen the fortress yet, because that's in Genesis 4. So I see. So I searched Yafo, Egypt, and granary, and guess what I see? I see that they're excavating Egyptian fortress in Yafo, Tel Aviv harbor. I said, Iris. She said, what? I said, you won't believe this. She said, what? I said, now I know where the harbor is in Genesis 1:2. The boat's in the harbor waiting for the loads of grain. She said, where? I said, it's in Yafo Harbor. This is what's referencing. And then I saw the fortress. They're talking about rebuilding the fortress in the underlying text of Genesis 3. I'm sorry, Genesis 4. Genesis 4. And I said, Iris, I said, go shopping. She said, why? I said, go shopping. Go shopping for whatever you want. She said, why? I said, because without you, I would not have done the search to find out that what I'm retranslating about, because everything that UCLA Professor Eric Burt is a lead archaeologist for the Jaffa Fortress, and he has a paper, Jaffa, Egypt's present, and he talks about the shipping jars that I was translating. The word for the garden, it's actually gan, G-A-N, which means large jars. So
speaking of which, hold on one second. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I'll send you a thing too. I can't remember the date. It's either 7,000 or 8,000. I can't remember. It's it found in Israel. It's a ceramic fake food jar. In other words, it has it looks like a little jar, but there's like balls of food or something, and it's all clay. It's totally but
really?
it was, and they found it in a grain silo, and I think they're. So it's interesting that you said about jars. Go ahead.
Well, the other thing that they found, Damien, they excavated, they call them flower pots. So they're like planter pots, about the size of planter pots we know, which are probably 8 inches tall or something. And they had a hole at the bottom. And that blew me away because I read, as I'm doing the translations, I see one customer was buying live plants. Oh my God, are you kidding me? So this whole connection, I could see everything I was translating was about the Dead Sea region, with Yafo being the shipping port. And who was coming? Look, it says the farm. It says the farm is in the east. I know it's hieroglyphic writing, so I know it's east of the Nile Valley. And guess where it says the merchants are coming from? The southwest. And what's southwest of Yafo?
I don't know. I have to look at the map.
Nile Valley. The Nile Valley. The Nile Valley is southwest of the farm. I was just like, what the hell is going on? And the word for east is the word that I know it means it's under. I don't know why it's under. It's under the hill. It's Abtati. Abtati means under.
Well, interesting that is they actually used to bury people in big pots under the ground.
Wow, really?
Yes.
Oh my God! And see,
I think that's about. I have to. Some of this stuff is hard. I know so much, but I don't the details. I think it's 6,000 years ago they buried in pots. Because I know that there's but later than that and younger than that too. But they used to bury people in like these big pots under the ground. And I think that the culture of doing the Kurgans, which becomes the Indo-Europeans up in the north, I think that does relate to the same. It's not the exact same, but it's the same theme of burying the human and then a mound over them.
Yeah. See, and even the word, if you look at my roots of English, you'll see I show several actual real hieroglyphs for the word. Hell, when we get into religion here a little bit now, the word hell in English comes from the Proto-Indo-European hell, K-E-L.
Right. So
you can see here again, and this is according to online etymology dictionary, you can see his etymologies, and he says hill comes from kel, K-E-L, and kel is actually right, it's kalala. But interesting thing is that K-E-L is wrong. But technically, and H-L-L is technically correct, because to cover something, or a cover is kalala, double L. But the pronunciation of ha is wrong because it's supposed to be ka. And in Proto-Indo-European, the pronunciation of K is correct. But European is wrong because it only has one hell, where hell is correct, but hell's meaning is wrong. Because it's not a pit under, in the middle of the earth. It's actually 6 feet under where they buried you. And the cover.
And I agree with that.
So, and the English were really, but remember, the English were part of the Roman Empire. You have to remember this, see? And this was the influence. They were trying to influence religion. Because
I would agree that that's why people have a confusion. Religion didn't start because people wanted to manipulate. I think religion started because of wonder, because people didn't understand, and so they tried to. I don't think it was like animism is almost like hippies. It's like they want to work with nature, and then totemism goes, hey, nature's scary, other people can be bad, we need to protect our own clan. Kind of an idea. And then shamanism goes, well, that's a little too male. We need to be a little more feminine and care about even the weaklings and the injured. And then paganism goes, what's that now?
I said all that's natural wonder, right?
Correct. It's natural, right? So that, because I hear a lot of atheists, and I'm definitely a hardcore atheist, but a lot of atheists say it's something I don't agree with at all. They say two things I've heard that I don't agree with. That religion started from fear of lightning. Absolute nonsense. No animist in the world is afraid of lightning. Period. Never were. In fact, I've seen a video where this anthropologist goes out with these animists, and they go hunt with a lion. They don't bring any weapons, just shields. The anthropologist is like, what are we gonna do to protect us? Oh, we're fine. Just do what we do. And they walked real slow and respectfully, and then they stood and waited at a certain distance. I don't remember how far, but it was pretty close. And the lion had killed something and was eating. And then the guy says, well, what are we going to do? Rush it? And he goes, no, wait. And so they waited and waited, and then they started walking a little bit closer and making noise and tapping the ground with their shield. And they keep walking closer, and the lion finally finishes for enough to where it's satisfied, and it throws dirt on the animal and takes off. Then they go over there, and the anthropologist goes, are we going to take the whole body? And they said, no. We need to only take a leg. That way the lion's not afraid about us taking anything and never attacks us, because it knows we actually are only going to leave the food and just take a little. They work with nature in a way that blows my mind. So
because when we have guns, we're just going to shoot it.
Exactly. Kill. Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. So I know for a fact that no animist is afraid of nature. They work with nature in a level we don't even grasp. So they're waiting. So that's why I feel, number one, I want to clarify for anyone that to think that it started in ignorance, as it started in lack of knowledge. Ignorance to me is more of a choice personally that people make. Lack of knowledge. We all lack knowledge, so then we're all ignorant constantly. I would be never-endingly ignorant if ignorant means I don't have the current, knowledge of everything. So I think that. Look, let me finish. Let me finish real quick. So that's what I'm going to clarify. So the other thing people say is that they try to say that it's only about control. That's nonsense. I don't think that animism was about control. It was about working with nature. Totemism is a little more about control, but not totally. It's still kind of working with nature. Shamanism is way working with nature again. It kind of goes back to animism. Even paganism as it starts isn't like that either. It starts more kind of shaman paganism, kind of work with nature. They don't understand, but we hope it rains. So it's really after that, sometime after organized religion. Because even when Egypt starts, to me, organized religion at 5,000, it still really is not super toxic. It gets toxic later.
So let's get into that. So let's first start with what the Bible isn't. The Bible is not religion, because the underlying text, it matches up perfectly. My retranslation ended up matching up perfectly with the excavation of the region, Dead Sea region, Yaffo Harbor. So clearly, these were actually written reports that were sent back to the administrative region, which was the African Nile Valley, Nile Delta region, and that's why the ancient Greeks and the Romans attacked and invaded the Nile Valley first because they wanted the Middle East Egypt grain. And Professor Aaron Burke, in his paper, he talks about the pharaonic granaries. So it's very clear that this was part of Egypt, but...
Hold on 1 second about that. Even the fact that people do not understand, Israel was never a sovereign country in a sense. It was always a sense of a providence of Egypt. And it's certainly until the Hittites came down, and then you have the big battle where then what happens is Egypt almost becomes a little bit pulled back, not because Israel's strong, but because it's like a buffer zone, like the DMZ for North and South, Korea.
That's where I'm heading now. That's where I'm heading. This is exactly what I'm about to explain. So clearly, they were Egyptians because there was no racism back then. Everybody, like you said, was just working together.
Yep.
So they were Egyptians, and the administrative region of Egypt, the Nile Valley, the Nile Delta, that was where the warriors, the military was sent from. And what's amazing is that Egyptologists write that the military was comprised of Ethiopian warriors. And you've seen the wooden statue of all the Ethiopian warriors lined up with shields and with spears.
Yeah.
Well, when I did the retranslation, as soon as you got into the second chapter, there was the word in Hebrew, which was military.
Uh-huh.
Now, I didn't know how to match that up. I didn't know exactly what it was. So I worked on it in context of the sentence, and they were right. It was military. But the word is Zabinya. The word in hieroglyphs, in the Dead Sea style writing, it says Zabinya. And what is the Zabinya? It's Ethiopian guard. And then later on, a couple sentences later, I see the word Tarinya. Tarinya is soldiers. And then I saw Tarinya Azmach. Tarinya, we know, soldiers. Azmach is a commander. And it says he was looking around. He was guarded. I just was like, wait a minute, the Egyptologists were right. They were Ethiopian warriors. So anyway, they were sent from the administrative region of Egypt, the Africa and Nile Valley region. Right. And this is why Greeks and the Romans attacked there first, because what did they want? They wanted the Middle East Egypt grain. How are they going to get it? They had to get the Egyptian military out of there. And in the Rosetta Stone, you'll see where they talk about the rebellion. The rebellion, they say the region is Teshu, Teshu. The word is actually Tisha. Tisha means countryside. It means bush, but it means countryside. And that was the region that I immediately saw when I saw the name of the region in Genesis 1. It was Tisha. And I had to go back to the Rosetta Stone to see what they called it. Anyway, so they attacked, but the Greek and Roman military were not powerful enough to fight the Egyptian military that was guarding the people and the farms and the region of the Middle East Egypt. So what did they have to do? Well, they already have farm reports, and we know, I believe, Professor Aaron Burke, they've dated the rebuilding of the fortress. I know they've dated the fortress 3,400 years ago. Mm-hmm. And Genesis, the underlying text of Genesis 4 talks about the rebuilding of the fortress, detail by detail. The entire Genesis 4 is about rebuilding. So I know that the reports are 3,400 years ago.
You know what's funny about that? Do you know that Jewish DNA traces to the Lake Van region with the Kurds? That the ancestor splits from the Kurds and the Ashkenazi Jews about 4,000 years ago in southern Turkey, near the Lake Van, which is near Mount Ararat.
Oh, really? That's kind of interesting. And I think I read something, not quite exactly what you just said, but there was something I read that was something like that.
Yeah.
And so we have these farm reports that were already 1,400 years ago, 2,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They were already 1,400 years old when the Romans got a hold of them. Do you think, I mean, really, do you think that everybody who wrote back then worked for a factory or farm or a government or something? They were writing about business, trade, economics, blah, blah. They were not writing poetry. If anybody thinks that the Library of Alexandria had a bunch of books on poetry and fiction novels, they're ridiculous. They're dreaming. These were farm reports. These were reports. These reports that came in from all over. And that's what the ancient Romans had. See, the Greeks came up with philosophy to fight the Egyptian traditional religion. But the Romans says, no, we're going to use this. We're going to harness this. We're going to create a Trojan horse. And so what they did is they took these farm reports. Each report, each chapter is basically about a different customer, by the way. So they took these farming reports that they had archived in the Nile Valley, where they controlled, and I could know that the ancient Greeks knew the hieroglyphic language because they translated the Greek message into the hieroglyphic language, and they used the right language. So we know that they could read hieroglyphs. And the Romans, the same thing. And Romans, they even wrote their names in hieroglyphs. So they get these reports, and I could see that they were reading the hieroglyphic word and then intentionally changing it, and then often saving the real word for the backstory. So the name Moses, they changed a word into a name. Moses, the word is actually, in hieroglyphs, it says king. But they saved that for the backstory and said it's a boy who would become king. But they said, but the word means something else. Pull out. They did the same thing with Messiah. Messiah, Mutsi. Mutsi means to come, to arrive. They wouldn't say Mutsi means the actual word that they read. They saved it for the backstory. They said the word means, they said the word means anoint. But if you look at Doug Harper's etymology for the word anoint, it means to smear. So I checked the word in Tigrinya for smear, and guess what it is? It's lamutzi. See, the ancient Greeks never thought that ancient Romans never thought I was going to come.
Yeah.
See, and I could see that they read the actual word, and they saved the actual word for the backstory. The anointed one is coming. So I saw this over and over.
Well, I was going to say, there's some atheists that get into that mythicism, where they think that in a sense the entire Judaism in every way was made up by Romans about Jesus and everything. I think that they probably utilized the story that was already there, like you're saying, it kind of mistranslated to their own ends.
Exactly. I cannot believe that the basic stories, the basic people, I mean, they had enough work. The ancient Roman military had enough work to mistranslate intentionally. But they had to have a source for these stories. And a lot of the stories came from the reports themselves.
Yeah.
But I do believe, like the Karaite Jews, when finally, 2,000 years ago, I think the Talmud came or something, and they're like, oh, that's innovation. This is supposed to be what we've been passed on orally all this time. Yeah. So anyway, back to ancient Romans. So ancient Romans, I mean, you hear the story of the Septuagint. I think the Septuagint is actually how this got done. So I believe, because it takes me 135 years to unravel 1,089 chapters. I calculated it takes me 45 days for every 45 days for every chapter. Mm-hmm. So it's going to take me 135 years. So 100 people or 70 people is about the right number to get it done in a year and a half.
Right.
See, so anyway, they mistranslate the whole thing. And the New Testament, Old Testament is all about the same thing. It's all about farming, all the same words, all the same context, blah, blah, blah. I mean, Aramaic, I read Aramaic just like hieroglyphs. I see the same words.
Right.
And anyway, so they said, okay, to get the whole thing together, they go to the Middle East Egyptians in the Dead Sea region in Jaffa. They said, hey, look what we found. It's 1,400-year-old documents. They look old. So what is it? Well, you don't know what this is? The Middle East Egyptians said, no, what is it? Yeah, this is you guys' religion. Is it? Yeah, you're talking about all your people. Well, what does it say? It says you guys are God's chosen people. Really? We're God's chosen people? It says that? Yeah. Why are you with those African Nile Valley people? I mean, it says they're supposed to be slaves. Look, it says they're right here. They went to Genesis 9. Yeah. It says they're supposed to be slaves. You guys are God's chosen people. What are you with this? You're going to be cursed like them. Oh, we don't want that. Wow. And so, we know they got the grain. we know the Romans got the grain. And this is how they did it. So, but like you said, it doesn't necessarily say that Jesus and Moses and all these people didn't exist and weren't passed on orally over eons. But the Bible, the underlying text, just doesn't say anything. And plus, in terms of names, there are no names. Even when the king and queen come in Genesis 3, there's no names. So if you purchase something from Target yesterday, and I purchased something from Target the day before yesterday, and at the end of the month we see Target's sales reports, are our names going to be in the sales report? No.
Well, interesting they do it. I was researching is what they call it Ur of the Chaldeans. See, the problem is there's a Ur up there in Turkey, southern Turkey, and then there's also a Ur in Mesopotamia, which I think that they're also connected. I don't know how linguistically, but the point is that Abraham supposedly comes from Ur of the Chaldeans. Well, to me, if you listen to where does he go back to? He says, I go back to my father's house in southern Turkey. So he goes and he dies in southern Turkey. And I know the genetics 4,000 years ago are from southern Turkey. So that matches what the story is in a sense hinting at. So if he leaves his father's house and he goes back to his father's house in a sense, and it's both in southern Turkey and there's a Ur up there, I don't see how that, in fact, even the Islamic tradition, it believes he was born in southern Turkey, which I find that to be, at least story-wise, that would fit with the genetics and with the fact that what the Bible says he goes back to me.
See, I call that the layered. Yeah, I call that the layered story. So we've got the underlying text, which is what it really says,
right,
farming and all that stuff, and we've got the layered on. So now I believe you're probably right that a lot of it is from the oral tradition that has been passed along, but you've got nefarious stuff in there.
Oh,
too.
definitely.
Now,
Absolutely. Yes, I know. I just wanted to clarify that some of the hints could have some kind of relation, although I don't think it's Mesopotamia. And another thing too is that there's direct trade routes all the way to Egypt and up to that place in Turkey, southern Turkey. So it would make more sense anyways than to go all the way from Mesopotamia across deserts and stuff or mountains to get to it where there's more limited. Not that it's like plus if one person goes by themselves on a known trade route where it's safe and there's cities all along, or go by yourself through the deserts over massive mountains.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. Like I think someone's making a mistake.
Yeah, right. Now we get to the really nefarious stuff, the real evil stuff, because this ancient Roman military, these people who did the mistranslations, they were not stupid. First of all, they could read hieroglyphs. That means they were educated. Two, they were able to change stories. They looked at the word, they changed the meaning, and they say something from the backstory, and it was very creative. You had to be a genius.
But I think I know why.
What the military did.
I think I know why they did it, because there's the oldest thing of a Christian is that basically the Roman people saying, hey, how do you deal with these people? They're fanatics. They're willing to die. You can't actually make them stop. I think that motivated them to go, hey, these are people that are fanatic, and they'll die for it. So I think that it was changed maybe because
that's what happened. And that's what happened, because as soon as the Middle East Egyptians accepted that premise that the ancient military, that I'm saying that the ancient military presented to them, they separated from the Africa region of Egypt,
right? Because
those were supposed to be cursed, and then they became separate. And guess who left? The military left.
Right.
The Ethiopian warriors left. There no way to protect it, and that's how the Romans then just walked in. But look at what the Romans wrote in. Love your enemies. Love your enemies.
Right.
These were geniuses. I mean, I'm gonna write a document to
And
you.
give unto Caesar what's Caesar's. I know. It's like...
See? I mean, that is the most genius thing that I had seen. But let's get to the women, though, because the women was really a terrible thing. So the underlying well, first let's talk about the text of what they wrote for 1 Timothy 2, verses 9 through 14. Women cannot wear fine clothes, cannot wear expensive jewelry, cannot wear braids. I mean, I remember my ex, she would get her hair done, and it would take her 2 days. So back then, it'd be really expensive, right? And women controlled the economy. They controlled all the money. They controlled the grain sales. They could deal with their grain. It wasn't the men's grain. So they had to first put down women, put women in their place, so to speak. And then it says they're supposed to be silent. They're prohibited to teach.
I know, that's
now,
or to learn.
Writing and the teachers. Women invented writing were the first teachers. So these reports, they're using the reports, what women invented against women. And it says they're to be in subjugation to men. And in one of the only 2 places in the New Testament that they wrote in Eve was here. It says because Eve was deceived and Adam wasn't. Now, what does the underlying text really say? Well, it says there was a guy who was on the farm who was stealing. And they lured him with food. Remember, Eve was lured. They lured it says a guy. It lured the guy with a helmet and a pot of food. And they waited back in the tree. And they waited until, the orchards. They had orchards, fruit orchards. So the military waited back in the trees and waited for the guy to come down the road, down the path, it said. And they caught him. Now, he was a thief. But it was a guy, and very specifically it says guy. So, how did they use the story? They used the story because the layered story is about a woman thief, Eve. Eve stole the apple. So here it shows you an example of where they got an idea for a story from the underlying text.
Right, and I would say that the reason that they attached women to snakes and trees is because in about 8,000 years ago in Israel, to me, is the first expression of the sacred tree, which was actually a human bone with a goddess figure carved onto it. That the tree is us. We are the tree. Yeah. Well, and women were also connected to the snake because snake had to do with the umbilical cord, and that goes back to animism.
Yeah, well, in Genesis chapter 1, that's about a particular customer who came from the Nile Valley in his boats, waiting in the harbor. He waits for 5 days. He gets there on Sunday. He waits in the daytime. It's not the word day, it's the word daytime. Day is 2 letters, ken. But in hieroglyphs and the Dead Sea Scroll writing and in modern Hebrew, it's 3 letters. It's a vowel and then ken. Yet ken is in the daytime. Okay. And so it says in the daytime Sunday, in the daytime Monday, all the way in the daytime Thursday, he waits for his load. There is the mention of a snake, but it's the word temen in Tigrinya. It says the production chief is a snake because he told them the loads were ready to be picked up. But the guy's waiting there day after day after day, and he's not getting his load. And he was promised, because it says they got the invitation to come. You can't just come to someone's region. You have to get invitation. So It says we were invited, and this guy doesn't have the loads. We've been trying to wait patiently all these days, and that's when they use the word snake. So in Genesis 1 through 4, there's only the word snake one time, temen, and it's relating to this. I guess what they consider this liar of a production chief who said his stuff is ready. See, so here we have So what they first did, they wrote from the underlying text of. They got the idea for Eve or women being thieves of their grain, what they considered their grain to plunder. The ancient Roman militaries, they considered that to be their grain, even though it wasn't. And the women controlled it. So they got the idea of the thief. And so on top of that, they wrote how they wanted women to be treated and subjugated so they could get the grain. Then, that's New Testament, so-called New Testament. Then they go to Genesis 1, and they write in Eve and the apple, and she was a thief. You see, so this shows you also not only where they got their idea from, but it also shows you that they wrote the New Testament. They mistranslated the New Testament and the Old Testament at the exact same time. The exact same time.
Well, yeah. Even the Old Testament, I think, wasn't finished until 2500. I think it's something like that. No. It was all done 2,000 years ago, within about a year to 2 years. I'm telling you, I've retranslated. Okay, so a friend of mine that I met through the hallofmott.com forum. Yeah.
Right. So he was sort of like, he was playing devil's advocate at first, because he couldn't believe, like I couldn't believe what I was retranslating. He couldn't believe it either. So he says, okay, do this first. Okay, now do this first. Now do this verse. Then he went to the New Testament and said, do this verse. So he started feeding me the verses because we wanted to know if it was consistently the same information of the underlying text. And he's a computer guy. He's like, he's involved in statistics and all this stuff. So he built a website for us so we can analyze all these words.
But I was going to ask, when did Romans though enter into Egypt?
Well, what I understand is they say that the Romans entered Egypt 30 BC. They say that the Greeks entered Egypt 330 BC, but they also say that ancient Greece was pulled into the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that the Romans took over. The Septuagint story is supposedly around the time of Ptolemy II. So the Rosetta Stone, 196 BC, is about Ptolemy V. So we're going back for Ptolemy II, we're going back maybe 250 BC, let's say. So that story makes sense as to what the 72 Jewish scholars that were called from so-called Israel to Egypt, it says to translate. It doesn't say to write down. The story says that they were called without telling them, the 72 Jewish scholars, what they were going to write, what they were going to do. They didn't say, the king didn't say, well, they just called them to come. It says that the king said to translate your stories into Greek. Now, they didn't bring anything with them. Religious people couldn't really write back then.
Right.
They didn't have anything, but like you said earlier, they had the story, and they all had the same story because they had it memorized word for word.
Which is the same thing. The original Quran, there was no Quran. In fact, Muhammad died, there still was no Quran. It was made after his death. So, and even the Quran itself, what was translated, there was a few things put onto like camel bones and leather and rocks and other items. But the point is, they didn't even have all that.
Really?
So most of it, once again, it's the king, or the fifth caliph, fourth caliph, third caliph. I can't remember now. I'm not super good on the Islam, but one of them, I think it's the third, fourth. Anyways, but he said gathered everybody together and goes, hey, let's let's put this down, and so everybody, that's why it's an oral translation. In fact, a lot of people even today want you to learn the Quran orally, like that you can memorize it.
Yeah, this is the other thing about the so-called chapters. Now, there are people, I think they're called philologists or something like that. They are sort of critics of the Bible. They have determined there was no one author for Genesis.
Oh, totally agree with that. Totally agree.
So when you look at the way they assign writers, it actually, I noticed that the chapter 1, let's call it chapter, the report 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The chapter 1, I could see certain spellings for certain words. So when I got to chapter 2, the same word, but spelled with different hieroglyphs. I thought that was interesting. So I searched how many different writers were there of the Bible. And it showed that Genesis 1, they showed it has one writer, and Genesis 2 has a different writer. I said, wow, this is exactly right. So I expected Genesis 3 to have a different writer. The problem was Genesis 3 had the same word, but spelled differently. But what was bad was this stupid guy. He's one of those know-it-alls. He conjugated a verb 3 different ways in one sentence to show how smart he was. He showed 3 forms of verb with the ma prefix, with the ta prefix, and with the a prefix for no reason other than to show. So this is, but it's interesting because Genesis 3 is where the king and queen come to buy stuff and to rebuild the fortress. And by the way, the fortress was built under the queen, not the king. The king disappeared. He appointed the queen as the merchant, as the negotiator, and he disappeared. I don't even know where he went. So all of Genesis 3 and 4 is really about the queen buying stuff and working with the architect, and she's right there with the builders and rebuilding the fortress. I mean, she's right there. So anyway, I came to the conclusion that this smart guy actually worked for the king and queen. I believe that he came with the king and queen from the Nile Valley, and this is what I'm telling you, it took me so long to do Genesis 3 and 4 because this guy was the same writer for Genesis 3 and 4, and he wouldn't do anything simple like the writers for 1 and 2 did. 1 and 2, they did simple stuff. Oh, let's just document. This guy wanted to be a show-off, and it took me so long. I couldn't wait to finish with this guy because he just really pissed me off because he was he was writing in a way it just wasn't necessary.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Like, I know what the hell is going on, and we know know-it-alls like that, right?
Oh, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I watched a video the other day, and this one guy starts using all these words, and I'm like, those don't even add to the conversation. In fact, everyone goes, huh? So they lose what you're saying. Like, totally unnecessary. It's like...
I go to the dictionary and encyclopedia and figure out what the guy's saying. You don't even hear what the rest of the guy's saying, right?
Yeah, that's...
Oh, my God. So here in Genesis 3 and 4, we see the power of women, the real power of women. They are the negotiators. They were always the negotiators. For millions of years, they were negotiators. And I say this, too. Okay, so here we have the queen work with the architect and the builders to rebuild the fortress. The Yafo fortress that we know is there, that we know they've excavated, blah, blah, blah. Now, you think about that. So another thing that the ancient Romans wrote in was a man should only have one wife because with all wars, you have genocide, some level of genocide of the population. But they wrote it in a way so that they would commit self-genocide. The ancient Egyptian Middle East Romans would commit self-genocide. And the way they did it, they said, a man should have only one wife. Now, especially back then, right, you have high infant mortality rates. Right. So I have a ex-girlfriend from Liberia, in West Africa. Uh-huh. My ex-girlfriends from Africa all grew up in the city of those countries. But she grew up in the bush, as they call it, the countryside. Yeah. Like the word tish I was telling you, they call it the bush. So she, her name is Mushy. Mushy means survivor. So why did they give her the name Survivor? Because in the bush, you have even higher infant mortality rates than the cities of African countries, as we do here in the United States also. Right. But she was the 6th baby born and the only one to survive.
Wow.
imagine this is only 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Imagine what it was like in ancient days. So you had to, each man had to have multiple families. Now, was he the head of household? No, because each wife lived in their own homes, had their own home. And who designed those homes? The man didn't design it. It was a woman's home, and so she was the one who said how that home was going to be designed. And she watched the construction workers build it according to the way she wanted it. Now, my dad was an architect and a framing contractor before that. And I asked him when he became an architect, I said, Dad, who makes the last decision on the design? The wife or the husband? He says, oh, it's always the wife. The husband just comes to get things started. And then the wife comes and she tells me how she really wants it done.
Well, I was going to mention something interesting about that relates to archaeology and the Israel, is that the Israel had, in a sense, two cults. They always had a goddess cult. That was the cult of the house, or the cult of the female. And so that the religion of the people and the religion that's listed in the Bible is not really the same religion exactly, because the ones that the people were ran by the females, and it had goddesses in them and house temple, deities. And then you have the temple, which is worshiping what the rich men are, in a sense, scribes or whatever, are being paid to do.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing I would say is that you mentioned about millions of years. Well, psychologically, there's a difference that men and women do when it comes to stress. So you've heard all the time about the fight or flight. Well, but that's mainly how men operate. That women operate more with what's called tend and befriend. And it was proven, I think, in 2006. So when you said negotiation, what is the tend and befriend? Well, befriend would be, in a sense, would be negotiate as a survival tactic. So I was just going to validate that I agree with what you said and psychologically.
Yeah, that's great. And what else is interesting is now there is the word for Egyptologists transliterate Isis. Isis is the Greek pronunciation. So Isis is actually take off the S at the end. So you have Isa. And then you look at the Egyptologists. They say Aset. Okay, Aset. So, Aset. What is Aset? And Isa. So, there's a word for emperor, which is Atse. Atse. How do we get the T at the end of it? Aset. Because Atseti is a female. She's the empress. She's the wife of the emperor.
Right.
And so, the queen that comes with the king is an Atseti. It is the word the Greeks pronounce as Isis. But that's not really interesting. You go to the New Testament, and they talk about Mary. I believe it's Matthew 1 or something like that. They talk about Mary taking Jesus to Egypt. It says Mary, and the word is not really Mary. But then when it says she, and here again we see that the mistranslators, the ancient Roman military mistranslators, read the underlying word. Where it says she, it's the word Atseti. It's another queen coming to, well, I don't know if it's the same queen. They don't write her name, but it's a queen.
Yeah.
Where it says she, the word is actually Atseti. It's the exact same Atseti as in Genesis 3 and 4. So, and it also shows you the consistency that all the underlying text is all about, merchants coming. It's never about, So, I was really amazed when I saw Isis right there, written in hieroglyphs for the queen. And if you look at my Papyrus of Ani, see, I put that website up in 2013, if you check the copyright on the webpage. I believe it was 2013, because it was before I did the Rosetta Stone retranslation. And in the Rosetta Stone, they mention Atheist also. And you see the Greeks actually use the right word, Atheist, for Isis.
Huh.
So
well, I think there was an artifact that was found written in Egypt that said that the Iana, Asher, and Isis, in a sense, are the same deity. They're all the one deity. The Iana from Mesopotamia, the Asher from the Canaanites and the Hebrews, and then like you said, Isis are the same female deity. They're one and the same. They're different names for the exact same person or being or whatever, or idea, I should say.
And it's good that you bring that, because I was talking about Nitsu before, and the Greeks got it right? So, and I also said that ancient Greek and ancient Latin writing is actually just ancient Egyptian writing, characters, and vocabulary. So I looked at mother. Now, what I found with Greek was if it's th, it's normally sort of explosive T. But the explosive T is also related to the TF, and to the T, and to the D. Anyway, here we know Netzil is ancestor, because the Greeks wrote it as ancestor.
Huh.
So we've got ancient Greek and ancient Latin that I know for a fact, because I've done certain words, are mistranslated. And just like the ancient Roman military wove this really creative narrative on top of ancient Egyptian farm reports and made 4 billion people around the world today believe that's what it says. Modern scholars are also mistranslating ancient Greek and ancient Latin, ancient written Latin, because they're not recognized. So take the word mother. Mother. Our mother is our ancestor. Mother. So do the linguistic sound change. Change the ma to na. It's not mitzvah. It's not mitzrayim. It's na. The th is th, and the r in mother is actually l. So in that text that they read, it doesn't say mother. In that ancient Greek text that they read, it doesn't say mother. Here, modern scholars are mistranslating because the word is nitzah. And therefore, it's talking about ancient Egyptian ancestors. So it's another example. I sent you the words for slave. Right. I don't know if you got a chance to look at them. It doesn't really say slave. One says donkey pack, and the other one says owner.
Yeah, no, I did. I put it in the blog that I'm going to put on the video also, and put the video in the blog. So I'm going to do both. Yeah. But because I want people to be able to follow along, not just with me or you. I want them to be able to go do research on their own. I love that. Go look it up. I tell people, don't believe what I say. Go research everything I say.
Right. And one of the reasons that I make all my books available for free,
which I think is great,
because it's impossible for me to even approach the number of texts out there that have been mistranslated. I mean, absolutely. I mean, the Egyptologist friend, Rich, who was pointing me around to different verses. I mean, he told me that some cuneiform tablet talked about, you didn't send me one of your daughters to marry, but no, it doesn't say anything like that. Nobody is going to give away their kids like that. They're not going to treat them as commodity like that. Not like that. To strangers, cousins marry cousins.
Yeah.
They didn't sit. And so I did a cuneiform tablet. I think I sent you a translation. It's talking about a rancher trying to get the guy to buy meat for the price they want to sell it for. So the ancient stuff back then, it was not about this. That's why I said Library of Alexandria was not like works of fiction and love stories. No, it was all about business reports. But people have this, modern scholars, I'm not trying to attack them.
Yeah.
But part of it's a blind leading the blind. And when you get caught up in that whole society, scholarly society and all that stuff, and the university system, and you got to do your PhD, and your professor believes the way it's been done, the status quo, you have to conform, and all your work has to you have to be the same, or else you're going to be. But see, I'm an outsider, so I never had that kind of pressure. I didn't apply for the $300,000 grant at the National Endowment for Humanities, partly because I could see that the translations grant program director. He wrote the email to me. I recommend that you apply for this grant. The deadline is November 15th, but he says try to limit it to one topic or one language or something like that. I thought, oh no, I'm not going to apply for this grant because see, now I'm starting to have to conform to the way they want it done, and that's going to limit me, and I'm not going to be able to make the discoveries that I'm going to be able to make. They're going to feed me the money over time. They're not going to just give me $300,000. See, so they're going to make sure that I'm doing it the way they want to. So I just said no. When they don't limit me, then I'll apply for the $300,000 grant. But I'm not going to apply for money where they're going to start limiting me. See? Yeah. So I just and before I did the Rosetta Stone, I was talking to Dan Sachs. He's the Linguistics program director, and he was trying to get me to apply for the grant back then too in 2014. And at the last minute, we were having conversations over and over by phone and by email, and I finally at the last minute just decided, no, I'm not going to apply for the grant because I know what's going to happen. And I told Dan, I said, the people who review the grants, I said, can I meet them? He says, no. I said, they're secret? He says, yes. I said, so I won't be able to have a discussion with them to see? He said, no. I said, so I already know what's going to happen. They're going to be status quo reviewers, and my work is never going to get approved. I'm never going to get approved for the grant. And this year, he was really trying to talk me. And then after we were exchanging emails, he forwarded the email to him over to the translations program grant director. And then that's the guy who said, look, I recommend that you apply for this grant. But he's the one who said he would limit me. And so I said, no, I'm not going to do it. So we've got to, I have all the books available for free reading and free downloading because I need help. And the more people who I can get to understand my process, understand that all the ancient written languages are all the same words, all the same context, writing about the same stuff, business, trade, and some law enforcement. Even Damien, when you see the Egyptians with the heads cut off, look, that was not the Egyptians going out and conquering. That was law enforcement. Look, they caught the guy. Look, they caught the guy on the farm in the underlying text of 1 Timothy 2. Do you think that they just gave him a pat on the back and said, you got to leave? And imagine when they catch groups of people invading the Middle East, Egypt, because that's where everybody wanted to go, because that's where all the food was. That's where all the produce was being grown. You think that they just gave him a pat, whipped them with a cane? No. These were people who were relentless to get into the farming region. Look at the ancient Romans. Look at the ancient Greeks. They were relentless in trying to get in there militarily, and they weren't even strong enough. So that was law enforcement. But modern scholars, they have this crazy idea about conquer, because that's what Europeans did. That's what the Greeks and the Romans did. They went to conquer. No, they're trying to put culture of one group and force it into the culture of another group. And that's just not what was happening. And you said yourself, you had all these people and they were just working together. So we've got all this.
Well, I would say that to me, one of the things that the first city-states, like I argue with someone about when I say that organized religion starts in Egypt, and they said, oh no, it starts in Mesopotamia, and I said I don't agree. Mesopotamia wasn't organized. That's something they copied from Egypt. So that yes,
Right,
they
you're
made the
right.
first city-states, but and Egypt copied the city-state. But Egypt took it one step further, and they mixed the north and the south as one unit. And they didn't do it, I agree, not very more militarily, because they said they mixed the gods together, they mixed the hats together, the clothes. I mean, so it became a unity. It wasn't about destroy and conquer, and that's something that then Mesopotamia goes, oh, maybe we should try more of it like that, working together instead of just destroying and attacking every city. Although then it goes back to war anyways.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because in fact, you've heard about the Ethiopian War. So you have the Red Sea Ethiopians, who are now Eritrean independent states, and you have the inland Ethiopians, and they've been fighting each other. They're the Tigrinya and the Amharic speakers. They've been fighting each other, battling, competition. I mean, it's just competition. It's always just been competition. And they were there in Ethiopia. So the Tigrinya speakers, the Red Sea ones, they went up the Red Sea into Egypt, and they ended up at the north. And so they ruled the north. And then the Amaras, the inland Ethiopians, they came up the Nile River. And, you have all these thieves called Shifta. They're still called Shifta today, by the way. All along the river trying to attack the boats going, blah, blah, blah. But, so they had the south. Now, the Shabaka stone reflects this. It says they divided up because they were fighting. But also, you look at the word for west. So the name Benjamin, they say it means son, bin, Jamin, on the right. Well, it doesn't say that. But what it does say is Yaman. Yaman, Jamin, Yaman means right. It does mean the right side. But the west of Egypt in hieroglyphs says Yaman. Now, the Amaras could not have called it the west, Yaman, because first of all, Yaman is not an Amharic word. It's a Tigrinya word. Right. So you have to be at the north looking south for the west to be the right side. Yaman. You have to be north. So the Tigrinya speakers came up the Red Sea, ended up at the north, and when they looked at Egypt, they looked south. Ras is head, and that's the south. Ras. So you have to be at the north looking south. So it was the Tigrinya-speaking people who defined, direction, who defined, in hieroglyphs, you can see that the, days of the week are in Tigrinya, the numbers are in Tigrinya, certain things like that are in Tigrinya, but common words are in Amharic. But also, the days, the first day, the second day, it doesn't say that, but it does say in the daytime, Sunday in the daytime. So I had done Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It was all in Tigrinya because I expected it to be in Tigrinya because I had seen it before in Tigrinya. So I couldn't figure out what the first day is. I know it's the day of the week because all the other ones are days of the week. I look in Tigrinya. It's not in Tigrinya. I'm like, what the hell? I'm just trying to figure out what word it is. So I said, well, let me just for the hell of it look at Amharic. There it was. Sunday. The first day that he arrived there, that's the word. It's the only word for a day of the week that's in Amharic. I was just like, what? And the other thing that I'll say about women's role, so we've got Suwaswu. They say Shishat. And they say, Egyptologists say the word means grammar. They attribute her as the goddess of writing. Okay, so look, she invented writing. So Suwaswu is an Ethiopian name for girls. And guess what it means?
I don't know.
Grammar. Grammar? I'm telling you, Egyptologists are getting it 98% right. But because they're not tracing the language, the living language, 25 million people today speak the direct language of the hieroglyphs. But because they're not tracing that, they're not able to even see the names like Amun. Amun is an Ethiopian name. It's a common Ethiopian name. I don't know how many Ethiopians I name Amen. You know, my ex, her nephew is called Amen. It means, to have faith or believe. Sawaswu is still a name that, for girls, that means grammar. And so, but there are two different pronunciations. Sawaswu and, anyway, they're so close you won't be able to hear the difference. One is Amharic, one is Tigrinya, but Tigrinya is the one, they say Shishat. The T ending for female, that's from Tigrinya. So the other one for the first city, the city of food, they say Nekabet, Nekab, but it's not Nekab because we've got the linguistic, so it's actually Mugab. Mugab means food in Amharic. Mugbi, with the vowel at the end, is Tigrinya, Mugbi. But Mugab is how the Egyptologists transliterated. So one of them is Amharic, or Amhara, an inland Ethiopian, which is the one who did the first city of commerce, the city of food, Nekabet. So you have the T at the end for. So one is Mugab, is Amharic, and the other one is Tigrinya. Oh. So I've always said that I could tell because most of the common words are Amharic, of hieroglyphs, and specialized words. Tigrinya, I can tell that Amhara started writing first, invented writing first. So you can see in the story, though, that the city of food was by Amhara, inland Ethiopian, and she's the one who needed the writing to document the business and all that stuff. And so that's where she started it, but...
Well, did you know that a lot of the goddesses actually, especially the older ones, have I know, connections to grain? So that's an interesting thought, too, about the food.
You had said, what were you telling me about that? Or I read on your site. You were saying something about that. Can you, explain that?
Yeah, well, I got it from a horticultural site where they were studying the history of plants in relation to agriculture's invention. And the guy in there, I don't know personally, but the guy in there said he traced that all the original goddesses had a grain connection, which makes sense to me because I see in Mesopotamia, northern Mesopotamia, and Turkey, and in Israel, the culmination of in Syria and stuff, that those areas basically make, in a sense, the first pagan religions. And the paganism starts with female and animals. That's it. There's no male. There may be a male animal, but like a bull. But the bull, but it wasn't a male. They didn't worship a male. They didn't even worship the rain originally, in a sense. They worshiped the goddess. The goddess is connected to the rain. So you did. So, but that reminds me. I wanted to go real quick on my idea of how we got to the language. Then I wanted you to give your idea. So my thoughts on the roots of language start about 100,000 years ago to me with the emergence of meaningful symbolism in Africa with animism, which becomes more developed about 50,000 years ago with totemism in Europe, which solidifies around 25,000 years ago in France, becoming universal symbols of proto-language and carried around with shamanism, which shamanism starts about 34 to 30,000 in Siberia. And then it further develops into the Balkans and then Turkey with the emergence of paganism. And so then you have goddesses, to me, after 12,000. And a lot of the goddesses are shown sitting, and the reason they're sitting is because they're sitting and giving birth. So the birth, and then you have the birth of the creation, of the male gods, to me, which is about 7,000 years ago in the Balkans, along with proto-kings also in the Balkans. And you can see that in the royal nobility skeleton, as I talked about before, in grave number 43, part of the Varna culture, which dates to about 64 to 61,000 years ago. Then you have, which has numerous gold artifacts, oldest in the world. And to me, then this takes a few different, I feel, lanes of it. Goes in a sense to me north and south. So it goes north in a sense and becomes certainly in the what's it called, the Cossack Mountains. I think Cossacks and part of going into Russia, but those people to making the Yama culture becomes Proto-Indo-European languages. And those people are also the same kind of ones that had ideas go south towards Jordan and Israel by about 65 to 60 till 6,000 years ago, and then from there they move into Egypt, and then in Egypt it becomes more advanced, and then goes emergence with the nation state around 5,000 years ago and spreads out over into things also like Mesopotamia. And that to me is what about after 5,000 is what I call the progressed organized religions. And then to me, all in a sense religions after that are more like that we think of it today as more like after 4,000. And like you were talking, it could even be as much as 3 to 2,000, and for even some of the ones people think are even older. So.
Okay. So in terms of let's just start with something easy, the ancient Egyptian religion. So the ancient Egyptian religion is simple African traditional religion. It's no different from religion today, even including the secret religious society that ancient Egypt had. I mean, the whole practice of ancestor veneration, whatever you want to call it, I mean, that's so typical of Africa. I mean, just the whole thing, like, I look at the actual ancient Egyptian religion.
Right.
And it's nothing but, it's just simple African traditional religion. So in terms of language, oh, and by the way, the other thing is I find that traditional religions around the world, including the Celtic, the Celtic religion, what they call Russian nature religion, religion in India, they all have this, where sort of like primary God is this BR or PR, character. And it's the same in Ethiopia, Xavier, So I see religion as having come out of Africa. I mean, you don't leave a place and leave without having faith and having some kind of faith in some supernatural, being. And so I believe that religion, when they left Africa, they didn't only take language, but they also took religion. But
and you say times? And you're saying left Africa, you meant that 50,000, correct?
Yeah, 50,000 years ago. But the same thing when Ethiopians left and went in southern Africa, 120,000 years ago, they also took religion with them. So religion was well implanted in society, Ethiopian society back then. So we think in terms of, like, when we think back 4.4 million years that we have, come on. Come on. I mean, for people to have the nerve to think that these Africans, these Ethiopians, 4 million years ago didn't have a language. Lions have a language. Monkeys have a language. Giraffes have a language. Snails have a language. Flowers have a language. You're going to tell me that of everything on the earth that has a language, these Ethiopians, 4 million years ago, 3 million years ago, 2 million years ago, didn't have a language? Come on. I mean, I just this is this whole superiority thing that, everything had to develop in Europe, and so I'm talking in terms of modern day scholars who have these racist theories.
Oh yeah.
To think, and even when I look at, so going into language, even when I look at Doug Harper's etymology, right? Understandably, because he's pulling from all these different sources. I can't remember how many sources he pulls his etymologies from, and then he condenses them, the ones that he thinks are correct, into his website. but he has, as I say, 100 different sources that he pulls from, right? But it's all Eurocentric because that's what Western scholars do. It has nothing to do with Doug Harper himself or his website, but his sources just happen to be Western European.
Oh yeah, well it's inaccurate because archaeology shows that stuff starts in Africa. In fact, that's why one of the things art I showed where it not only did about 100,000 to 77,000 was their obviously language, because to me the symbolism evolves in how they scratch the rocks. It's not like, but it gets more evolved, not in a sense, not less. And to me,
and how are you?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well,
go ahead.
it's archaeology. So they did this paper and they did scientific study on the caves and stuff and what they were doing to these. Generally, it was those red ochre that they're scratching. That's not the only thing, but it's generally that. But red ochre to me is important because red ochre I see is the same thing that they would sprinkle on in graves. It has to do with I think when you come into this world there's blood. A lot of times when you go out of this world there's blood, and so to me, I see the red ochre on a grave as a form of reincarnation or rebirth to the afterlife.
And you found this of what I was reading on your blog. I think I read, your video I was listening to it. You said that you not only found it in Europe or somewhere, but you also found it in the southern region grave in Africa, southern. Yeah,
Africa. Oh, absolutely. Africa and the oldest, which is African connected, the oldest grave in Australia has the red ochre on it, which is and buried in a way that's like Africa. So it's definitely that Australian original. I see Australia as getting waves of religion. I feel like that the first people brought animism from Africa. Then, as I said, they get a form of, in a sense, shamanistic totemism, I believe, by about 30,000 years ago, because you have basically Asians, in a sense, going down to be almost from the area of the Disinnovant cave, which to me would give you a possibility of how there's this bunch of Disinnovant DNA in the people of Australia and in the Papua New Guinea, higher than anywhere else. And this is the part I think is interesting. About 30,000 years ago is when Asians become Asians, split off. So before that, in a sense, is kind of not. But this is the thing is what I think is interesting. They go, well, why isn't there more people that are Asian with that DNA now? Well, I think that we have to understand that with people left, they could have had a higher than the general population, and the Disinnovants.
Absolutely right about that.
Right. So, and I showed that the boats look very different than anything that was before. It's like I think 23,000. You have the depictions of boats with different clothes, different art starts showing up in Australia. Nothing like before. So the first is definitely to me Africans, and then it's an Asian influence that comes in, and they bring in the shamanism, totemism, to me. So but as you said, people need to get this. Every religion.
Everybody discounts Asia. Everybody discounts Asia.
Oh, I know they do. Well, it's racism. It goes back to racism, probably. But everyone needs to understand. To me, really, as you said, every religion to me is just a version of African religion. Because that.
Absolutely. And let me show you a word that I found on Doug Harper's site. So on Etymology Online Dictionary. So. Most words are so easy. I mean, I've gotten it down. When I was first translating, matching words, before my first book, it might take me 2 days for a single word, working like 16 hours a day, right? Now it literally takes me for average word. You give me a word, and in 5 minutes, I've showed you the match to Ethiopian language. But, so I published a book of names, the roots of names. So there was the word Margaret. And Margaret was one of the only words on the Etymology Online Dictionary that he says it means pearl in Greek, marguerite, and it means pearl in Latin. I can't remember how it's pronounced. So it says this was the root. But Doug is smart, and he was smart enough to mention from one of his sources, he mentions it's probably an Asian word.
Right.
So I say, okay, because I can look at Chinese characters, I can see that they're just hieroglyphs. But so
well, there's a strong connection, by the way. Even after Egypt became in a sense a nation, there's a strong connection with the haplogroup X is in China, Egypt, North Africa, the Cossacks, Central Asia, and some Europeans.
You see, if it wasn't for DNA research, right?
Oh, DNA, man.
Really.
DNA, the truth will set you free.
Right? You lie, right? So there's my truth, your truth, and their truth, and that's DNA. So I look at Marguerite, I say, okay, it really to see that Doug Harper put probably an Asian root. I love impossible stuff. I mean, if it's not impossible, I ain't doing it. If everybody's doing it, I ain't doing it. I need something impossible. So I said, okay, let me do Margaret. I said, let me search. Because when you do words, right, like Matsalabi, which is the hatchet, Natsala, which is the verb, detach, and Natsala, right? You have the sound change, and I recognize that one word could be one of those three versions, depending on how it's in the sentence, but words are related, and they could be different forms of the word, noun, verb, adjective, whatever. So I'm doing Margaret. Okay, so I use Japanese, Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese. Those are my four languages that I
Japanese I know comes from Chinese anyways. They use Chinese, and it's basically a version of that.
But the Japanese use their own words.
Oh yeah, so, I'm not saying they don't, but I'm saying it.
They use the same character, but they didn't choose to use a Chinese word. They said, we got our own word, thank you. But they write it the same way. Okay, so anyway, so I searched pearl in Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Korean. It's not there as that basic magaret, right? So I searched. You have to think, okay, what's the related word? Clam. So I searched clam. No, it's not any of them. So I searched, I think, what else? Clam, pearl, oyster. Search oyster. There it is in Japanese. Hamaguri. Hamaguri. But it has the Tigrinya ha at the beginning of it, which is a vowel. Hamaguri, hamaguri. So hamaguri. Hamaguri. Maguri. See, Margaret. But there's no T at the end. But I know it's Tigrinya because it has a ha prefix in Japanese. Because I did Roots of Japanese, Roots of Chinese. I did those two books. So I said, okay, so I know it's the root of the word Margaret, the name Margaret. I know it's Japanese now. But even before that, I know it's Tigrinya because we have the ha prefix. But I need a T. And what is a T? T suffix is plural or feminine. So I start searching. Oh, you don't even want to see how I have to do searching, doing word matching. But I have to do it sound for sound for sound for sound for sound. I mean, if there is just a simple way of understanding it, if the word is, let's use lala, 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 lala. I have to search, we learned this in math. The first place is two options, la, L, and R pronunciation. The second consonant is 2, L or R. So we multiply 2 times 2. That's how many options we're going to have. And then you add in the vowel. Ha, hu, he, ha. You have like 7 in Ethiopian language. And so you multiply 2 times the vowel times 7. Then that times the next consonant, 2. And then the 7 vowels again times 7. And this is how many. I actually had a programmer do a website where I could put in a word and it'll show me every single combination, like 3,000 combinations. And this I do word matching, so it's not. And then I got to also match to the translation, to the meaning. So anyway, so I've got Hamaguri. I'm looking for a T. I have the Tigrinya prefix, so I go to Tigrinya. I go to match up the word with the T at the end, and I've got it. It's Magurti. What's Magurti in Tigrinya? It's cheeks. So that means that the word Margaret does not come from the actual pearl, but it comes from the pearl that's in the mouth, seeing the clam as a mouth.
Yeah.
Because the actual word is cheeks. And the T at the end is plural because you have two cheeks.
Right.
This is the kind of stuff that it makes your brain fry. You can only do so many hours of it a day.
Oh, I understand. Do you think that I got to all the archaeology understanding and all these different religions, the entire world?
Yeah, right.
The way that I have, that it wasn't hard. My eyes bleed sometimes. I work like 16 hours a day. I mean, I told people before, I've read like probably 10,000 articles at least to understand what I have. Because you know what's really crazy is at first I really trusted every archaeological source. Then I started going, wait a minute. Because I started noticing that when they say this is the oldest, they're not always talking from knowledge. Sometimes they just mean to me, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
What they should say, to my knowledge, there's nothing older. Because almost every time I looked, there was something older.
Right. They will never say what we understand at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Put it at that, right? Pluto, is Pluto a planet or not?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what year we're in.
Right.
10 years ago, it was a planet. Now it's not a planet. 30 years before that, it was not a planet. Then it became a planet. Now it's not a planet. And 20 years from now, it's going to either be a planet or not a planet. Maybe it'll be asteroid. But they always say, but no matter what period we're in, they say Pluto is a planet.
Yeah.
And they say, and they never say we were wrong. Now Pluto is not a planet. They just want to be these, and like I started.
Well, speaking of which, the last thing I read that I thought was funny, talking about Israel and Africa, relation to the person says, "Oh, look, there's I think there's 6,000-year-old burials of children. See, it showed that they started caring." I'm like, do you not know about Africa? 74,000 years ago was the first burial of a child, at least.
Oh my God! You see, but I blame Western scholars for this, and I blame not Western scholars themselves, but their professors.
Mm-hmm.
But not the professors. The professor's professor. So you got to go so far back to who caused all this confusion. You see, but you know where it starts? It starts with the ancient Roman military. If the ancient Roman military did not put that religious Trojan horse in the Middle East, Egypt, to steal their grain, we would still, nobody would be jet skiing. They would be on the damn farm working. Nobody would be skiing in the damn mountains because they would be on the damn farm working. No one would be surfing. No one would be doing these travel trips for the hell of it. Everybody should be working. Imagine, they talk about, we don't know what we're going to do about food production. Hell, because nobody's working. Put everybody back to work.
Well, what they want is the rich want the slaves to work, and so they have, to me, they used to have, different kind of slaves. Now, to me, they have wage slavery. They pay people so low they actually can't hardly live. Or like the government workers, take away a paycheck for 1 or 2 days. People like lose their house or whatever. They lose. I mean, it's like devastating.
I mean, look what's happened with the shutdown. So all the problems that we have in the world, it's only because stupid men, took over what women had done, nurtured families, nurtured the environment, regulated the environment. Now men come along and women can't even breastfeed anymore.
I know, in public, you mean?
They've got formula. They can't even, like, what the hell? Men have ruined everything, and I'm a man.
Well, I'm a man too, but I was going to say, but actually I'm genderqueer. I feel kind of a little bit of both. But to me, I would say that the problem isn't directly men. So to me, the problem is directly that we run off a male society. That is, in other words, even men could run off of a more feminine, equalitarian society. To me, whenever, let's say real quick. So whenever men totally rule, generally men are the ones that have rights. When women are ruling, like you were saying, women are more egalitarian, then more people than just women have rights. And so I think that there's, our society is so toxic male that we consider anything that's caring and stuff as being, pussy or no good. But if you said, how should you treat your kids? Do we really want to not treat them with kindness? Do we really want a society where we feel scared? Really?
Now, those are my kids. See, now, when you start talking about someone's kids, everything changes, right? But when you're talking about regular people.
Right, yeah.
Now, look.
Well, because other people don't matter. But they really do.
Yeah, exactly. See, if it's not blood, it doesn't matter. And sometimes blood don't matter. Men have, it's amazing to me, right? Look, I ask people, what does a man get out of a religion that vilifies women to the point where women stop having their babies? Now, you look at skinheads and white supremacists and neo-Nazis, their biggest problem, their biggest complaint is that they're facing extinction, and the only thing that they could think to do is to get rid of the competition. And there's some stuff that makes sense in that for the position that they're in, though it's not, it shouldn't be doing it the way they're doing it, but they're not going to fight their own women to force them to have children because they can't. So
well, what's so funny, speaking of that point, right now in Hungary, I just watched a thing. In Hungary, the guy's a right wing, right? Well, he's now said he'll support women having more children so that way they have more Hungarian children and not outside people.
Yeah, see? But the women around the world, 4 million people around the world participate in Bible religions. And Bible is all about self-genocide.
Well, the Quran has a lot of that too.
Yeah, one wife per man, Christianity.
Yeah.
Right? You got like a virgin mother. This concept of the virgin mother who don't even need a man. If you don't have a man, like my father said, son, if you want children, you got to start having sex. No. Yes, son, you have to. I said, no, you have to get married first. He says, no. If you want children, you just have to have sex. I said, no, come on, Dad. This can't be true. He was right. You gotta have sex, whether you're married or not. You gotta have sex. But so white supremacists and these people, they know what's happening, but they can't fight their women. But they're smart enough to try to outlaw abortion because women have said, we're not having your babies, and if I get pregnant, since I've got to compete against you in university, in education, in the job market, I don't have time to have your baby, so I'm going to have an abortion. And if I can't have it legally, I'm going to get rid of your baby. This is what women are saying today. All around the world, they're saying this. But white supremacists are, I use the word smart enough, but it's not, I don't want to make any judgment. I just want to say they understand they need to have some way to force women to have their babies. But the women are part of this religion that vilifies them and calls them thieves, and so they said, we're not going to have your babies. So what people need to do is stop believing in this fake Bible religion. That will solve all the problems. If women are not vilified,
well, I don't know about all the problems, but it certainly would alleviate some of the problems.
Some of the major, because women can now, they to be in subjugation of men. Now they can do what they want to do. They don't have to be silent. They can do what they want to do. They look, all the priests are males. You can't have a female priest. Come on. See, this is another way they shut women out.
Which is funny because the oldest shaman 31,000 years ago is female. And then the next one at 14,000 is female, and the one at 12,000 in Israel is female, and the one in Germany at 9,000 is female. I don't know. Are we hearing a pattern?
Right? You see, so
speaking of, hold on one second. In the Korean, the name for shaman was originally only female. They added, I think it was in 1500 or 2000 something. They added a name to give one for women. They used the shaman that used to be for women, for men. But yeah, so to me, it's been women, really until about 2,000 years ago with the almost the universal death of female goddess religions or goddess faiths.
Yeah.
And it was interesting too. Most of goddess faiths, guess what? When women are in control, everyone is equalitarian generally. They're more, you know.
Yeah, you and I are brothers, and we live on the family compound, and everybody's got to work. You can't go skiing, I can't go surfing, okay? We've got to work. So we are on the farm. Now, the women are in control. The women are the ones who take it to market. They handle the money. If their houses, the men, you've got our father has 5 wives. He don't have a home. He goes from home to home to home. Those are the women's homes. So the women, each of the women in control at the farm, they eat 1 ear of corn. How many ears of corn do we get to eat? We each get to eat 1 ear of corn. Men don't do this. Men hoard. Men, they invented coin. So it's not going to perish. The wealth isn't going to perish. Men, they've taken everything and they've hoarded it, and then they're gambling it. Stock market, this gambling. They've told women, oh, here's bottled water. Oh, we brought an aqueduct in. You don't have to check on the river. You don't have to go to the river with the kids to get the water. Just relax. Oh, you know what? You don't even have to feed the babies. You breastfeed them. Oh, we got formula. Oh, we got baby food. Oh, you know what? Just sit at home. We'll take care of you. And then we've got the rivers polluted. We've got the environment being destroyed. We've got all the animals. They said, I read the other day, all the insects are almost extinct because of pesticides.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and another thing is that females, if you take a country, show me any country in the world, and tell me that there's no human rights for women, torture is generally totally accepted by that society. And you have one where women have equal rights, and it's almost the exact opposite.
Yeah, it's just really amazing. And then but you also have to think, it makes sense for men want to be a part of the Bible religions because it gives them power they never had for years.
True.
So, yeah, it makes sense. I'm going to be head of household? What? I get to control the money. I get to tell her what to do. So why do women, though? Why would women succumb to a religion that says that they're thieves?
Indoctrinated from children. They don't know any better. So I didn't start even looking at anything until I was 35. I was a devout Christian until I was 35, and I went to school to be a mental health therapist for addiction. And when I went, then they told me, well, you're doing addiction, you got to learn about other things than just the Bible, because you're going to have to deal with people of other faiths. And that was the first time I had ever looked at another faith. I couldn't even have told you 5 versions of Christian. I mean, I was raised in a Christian cult until 13. And then I was raised in evangelical Pentecostal, which was also another form of kind of like wild and crazy. So I went from wild and crazy to wild and crazy. So I left that going, wow, and those are probably wrong, but I still believe this nonsense for some reason. But then when I went to school and they started showing me this, and I went, wow. And then my wife said to me, you know, I think all the religions are connected. And I had just taken a comparative religions class, and I had started to think, yeah, they all say, this was interesting to me, they all say that they know the way to the afterlife. It's not like they share it generally. The only one, they know what you have to do, and only their way gets you there, and only their morality and their thing. And I said, man, they're all saying that. Every one of them saying.
African religions don't do this. All around Africa, I'm talking about their traditional religions.
Right.
They know there's God, and they have their own ancestors, and they pronounce God's name based on the meaning and the language and the way they pronounce certain words, and whether they see God as a female,
right,
whether they see God as a male, a creator, a nurturer, whatever. I mean, they don't fight over, but see, this is that whole thing brought on by the ancient Roman military. But the ancient Roman military thought it was going to be confined to Egypt, Middle East Egypt, and Nile Valley Egypt. They had no idea that later on, 4 million people, including their own empire, would succumb. But back to why would women, where it says a man shall have one wife. Now, this means that lucky woman gets that lying, cheating, no good guy all to herself. This is the only reason that women belong to the Bible religion, so that she can have that lying, cheating guy all to herself. Because if you ask women of any age who have children, how she ended up having children from this guy, every single one, just about every single one will tell you. There are exceptions, but most of them will tell you, well, I knew this guy was no good. I knew he was a liar. I knew he was a cheater. He chased me for years and years. And then my cat died, or my frog got sick. This is something like that. And then he was there. He was there for me when my cat died. Of course he was there. He was chasing you for 5 years. He knocks that into her every day. He chased you down the street every day. But see, once they get pregnant by these guys, after they gave in to them.
But see, I would say, to me, it starts, that may be true for some. I think it starts before that. Because I've seen girls that have no understanding of sex at all, already worshiping the idea of having babies and having marriage and having, a house and having a picket fence or whatever.
That's what women do. That's what women do. For millions of years, that's what they did. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying, but culture makes it that, like you said about having sex and having babies, that the only way to have babies really is to try to get married, is to try to do it this, whatever way. And so I think that, but they fall in love with marriage before they ever fall in love with a person to marry, and that is something wrong with that.
And that guy ends up tricking her. I always say he hugs her, I'm sorry about your cat. And then that turns into a kiss, and that turns into sex, and she's pregnant now. And now she knew the guy was no good. But the guy was there. And when you try to talk about him, yeah, the guy's no good. And she said, wait a minute. He was there when my cat died. You can't say nothing about it. See, she can talk about him all she wants. I mean, look, I ask women of all ages, of all nationalities, of all ethnicities, and generally speaking, I always got the same basic answer to how they ended up with that guy who they divorced. 85% of marriages in the United States end in divorce. And women are the ones divorcing men. And I've heard the story so many times. Someone told me the other day, the exact same story. Her kids. So if women are signing up for the Bible religion so she can have that cheating guy to herself, because all women are trying to figure out who are with one of these cheating guys, what it takes to get him to stop cheating. Now, if she takes him to church and listens to the pastor tell him that he can only have one wife, he can't cheat.
Right.
Then she thinks now she's got him. There is no other reason. Look, my grandfather was from Ethiopia, right? From Ethiopia, and I'm here in America. I'm a black man in America, and Genesis 9 says that all Africans are supposed. This is the the way the ancient Romans wrote it. It says that Africans are supposed to be slaves. And so when I read that, and I saw a publisher, the Bible publisher, notations that says this proves that.
Yeah, I've not seen that, but my stuff, most of my stuff, just so you understand, most of my. Go ahead.
So when I saw that, that's when I was no longer Christian, because I said I cannot be a part of a religion, and they use this verse to justify the North Atlantic slave trade. I said I cannot be a part of a religion that says I'm supposed to be a slave. That's the day I was through with Bible religion. But women are not doing that. Women are grabbing that one little thing out there that's for their benefit.
Yeah.
But they don't understand that none of it says what it's supposed to say, and everybody's been tricked. 4 billion people around the world have been tricked by the ancient Romans 2,000 years ago who just wanted grain. They weren't trying to end the earth. They weren't trying to end the environment. They weren't trying to, subjugate all women around the world, because they needed women too. But the thing got out of control. It became a Frankenstein. And here we are today with most of the population of the world in population decline, self-replacement fertility, where they're saying, Bill Gates, there's an article with Bill Gates. He says he's worried about the world. He's worried about Africans. And you read why. He says, because by the end of the century, there will be 4 billion new people on Earth.
Yeah.
And guess what? 3 billion will be African.
So?
And only 1 billion will be. Now, the reason for that is, though.
Why does that bother them? Why does it? It does like I've heard someone say, well, eventually everyone will become brown. Like, we started that way, so what's the point? And?
Every war, there's genocide. And Bill Gates is one of those people who believe in eugenics. And so they need to depopulate. That's what the goal of the ancient Romans was, just to depopulate Africa and the Middle East so that they can have all the resources for themselves. They didn't mean for it to turn into what it's turned into. But why is Africa going to have 4 billion of the new 3 billion of the new 1 billion? And when you look at the replacement fertility charts, why is the heart of Africa the only place where populations are on the rise? It's because Africans did not fall for the religion full time. Everybody else around the world fell for this false religion full time, but Africans, if they're Christians, I'm telling you, Damien, they're only, and you can ask some African friends of yours, they are only Christians during church. The rest of the day, the rest of the week, they practice their traditional African religion.
Huh.
So they're the only ones who did not fall into the self-genocide trap. And I told a Nigerian preacher who was trying to Christianize.
Oh, the Nigerians definitely have a bunch of preachers that go.
Yeah, I told him.
Isn't that where they had some to eat grass?
They have what?
I think they had the congregation. A preacher had a congregation go out and eat grass and drink gasoline, all kind of nonsense.
Yeah. So I told this guy, Chuku, I said, look, you're trying to get me to be Christian again. I said, but you got something I don't have. He said, what's that? I said, you got 2 religions. He said, looked at me. He says, what do you mean? I said, you know what I mean. I said, you got Christianity and you got your traditional African religion. He said, what? I said, you got Christianity and you got the real religion, your traditional religion, which you practice all week long except for in church when you're trying to convert people to Christian. He laughed like you did. He laughed really hard and said, yeah, you're right. I never heard him try to preach to me again. See, so they're doing it for money. But Africans, you look at the sub-replacement fertility chart, they're the only ones who are growing. And this is why the article a couple months ago with Bill Gates. See, because Bill Gates is in the same position that white supremacists are in. I mean, I hate to say it, but I understand and I can sympathize with white supremacy.
I don't.
I
I don't sympathize. I find it to be horrid. I don't sympathize with it at all.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Hell no. If there's any white supremacists on it, you can go fuck off because I don't care about you at all.
Look, let's say that I'm right. Let's say I'm right about the cause of population decline. Let's just imagine for a minute I'm right. That's because ancient Romans and what they did with the fake religion. Now, my people in Africa, the population is on the rise. The rest of the world, Western Europe, is on decline, and they're about to go extinct, like the Neanderthal. Now, I could either do something about it and put out the information I'm putting out, this latest article, talking about, the video I have, Stop Self-Genocide, because it doesn't apply to Africans. I could either do something about it, or I can shut the hell up and let everybody just die out. But why should I do that? Why should I be silent?
I'm not totally getting what you're trying to say. Be silent in what?
The point, if I'm right about the cause of population decline, that's directly linked to the full-time observance of Bible religion. That Bible religion has an element of self-genocide built in.
Well, I would say the liberal one does, because conservative ones who demand that their women have tons of babies, especially like in the United States, that if you have the ones that are so.
Yeah, no women should be a part of a Bible religion. First of all,
I don't think, to me, no one should be part of any religion, but yes, I do agree that the Bible ones are absolutely toxic.
Basic religion is not harmful. It's when you get into
that's not true, because even animists see children as being demons and not feed them. Totemists in Papua New Guinea, they'll actually hurt and torture women if they think they're demon possessed. So I mean, religious belief always had to me as a potential to violence. But yes, I would agree that none of those are as actively toxic as often the Christian and Bible religions.
That's all I'm saying. So imagine that I'm right. And imagine that Western Europeans are the ones who caused this, the ancient Romans. Let's say ancient Romans were the ones who did cause this. And let's say I'm right. And let's say that through all of my new writing, all my new works, and a documentary, all this stuff, I talk about self-genocide. I point to the fact that and if I'm right, the fact that the Bible religions have caused this. And just by getting rid of Bible religions and women taking back control of the world will reverse all the problems that we have. Let's just say I'm right.
Well, I would say, I don't know if you're right, but I do know that the Shakers actually started adopting children because I think they were the ones that didn't have sex, didn't believe, and they dying off. So they started trying to adopt children, and I think that relates to actually the U.S. making laws about adoption, because they were just getting children and then indoctrinating them to be Shakers and no sex, in a sense. And,
Well, imagine.
And they were Christians, by the way. Shakers were Christians. They were Christian fanatics.
Right? KKK are Christians too.
I agree.
So imagine that I'm right. Now let's go.
Well, the Nazis were Christian. Hitler's like, I don't know how many times. He may not have fully believed it, but he definitely used it and promoted Christianity. And said, he even has a thing where he said that his party was a Christian party. And even some of the belt buckles that with a Nazi symbol, it says, I can't remember how to pronounce it, but gosh, whatever. But it means, in German, it means, part of God or connected to God or chosen by God or something, or something. I can't remember exactly now, but it has to do with God, and they were meant to the God of the Bible. So even Nazis are Christians.
Right. You see, so imagine for a minute that I'm right. Now let's go 5,000 years into the future. And because of what I'm writing, and because I happen to be right, assuming that I'm right, that the world decided to change, eliminate the Bible religions, let women be back in control because men have ruined enough in 2,000 years in their little turn. Let it go back the way it was millions of years. Now, what are Africans going to say to me? 5,000 years from now, when they read that it was this Legesse Allyn who outed the ancient Romans and the military and the Bible, what are they going to say to me? And more Hitlers pop up in Europe and invade Africa. They're going to say to me, if that Legesse Allyn had kept his mouth shut, all the rest of the world who was attacking us and trying to take advantage of us and trying to use us would just have disappeared. But that stupid Legesse Allyn had to help them, had to try to talk some sense into the skinheads, the Nazis, the future Hitlers, the future, because you never know who's going to be who. I know in the future that they're going to say that stupid Legesse Allyn if he just kept his mouth shut. So I've had to make a decision about what I'm going to do just in case I'm right. And what I've decided to do is look at women. And I grew up with all females. I grew up with all sisters, no brothers. I had no brothers to talk all that craziness into my head. And my sisters spoiled me so much that I spoil any female around me.
Yeah, well, my sister and me don't get along at all, and I have a brother. Yeah. And why I value or understand the value of women has to do with understanding psychology, has to do with understanding archaeology, and understanding the roots of religion and the roots of culture. Because I do everything 5,000 to 1,000,000 years, and so I didn't start with this. I started in a sense feeling that it was wrong because I saw my father hitting my mom, and I wanted to kill him or stop it, and he was also hitting me. But that was, I think, the beginning of me saying women shouldn't be treated like this. But I didn't want to be treated like this either. But it was actually not really, till I got to college and learn more. And then the more I learned, the more I started going, what? Everyone's been lying. Everything's been run by females. Why do they act like, it's a new thing that females have rights? They did before. This is nonsense. But I want to make one point about people have goddess faiths. So goddess faiths, I think it's wrong to always assume that because a culture has a goddess, that women have rights. Romans had goddesses, and yet women did not have the rights they should have had. And another thing, too, is just like think of our America. America had a black president. Did that mean racism was over? Not even close.
I know, right?
So I think so I think you need to be careful, to me, and I try to be careful, that just because a culture has a goddess, even if they had no gods, I still doesn't mean women were totally treated equal. I agree that it was more common to have equalitarianism with goddess faith than it is with any of the like monotheism.
Well, what we do know for sure, Damien, is that we've existed for 4 billion years prior to men coming into power. And we know we're not going to have an environment.
Well, I would say humans are about 350,000. If you're talking about other creatures, life itself, I would agree that, like, I see the roots of morality. Someone asked me, what's the roots of morality? And I said compassion. And I think it's like 300, it's like 300 and I think 300 million. I'm guessing 300, 200. I can't remember exactly. But it's a shrimp that started having a sac, it was a mother, for the babies to survive longer in. They would a pouch. So I see it's this bonding, and it's female, this care for the young.
That's another thing.
Yes.
Absolutely. The men don't even have a home. The women are the ones feeding. My ex, Leshy, she said that it was women who were doing the farming because the kids had to eat. The men weren't doing the farming. The men cut down all the trees and dug up all the stuff, but it was the women who were doing the planting.
Right, planting. Well, I would say probably also because they saw the women as, and especially grains, as goddesses, like that guy said, that I could see where that women were supposed to. They were the ones that were in charge.
Absolutely. Right. So the point that I was making about why am I doing this? Why didn't I just go and just continue consulting and products I have on the market? It's because I thought, if I'm right, and if I don't do something, who am I hurting, ultimately? I'm hurting women. And I decided, well, if I'm going to continue with this, I'm going to continue writing, and I'm going to approach women's rights from an ancient women's rights perspective. And that's what I'm doing now. And when I'm done with that, I'm done. I'm done. I'm so done because I don't like politics. And the Bible, it's just the current translations are politics, and it isn't what it says, and it's ruining the world. And I am just so done. I want to do whatever I can to protect women, especially right now in the age of the Me Too and Time's Up and them trying to get their power back. You know, I mean, the sooner they can get their power back, the sooner they'll start having babies again. But they're not going to have babies.
Well, I want women to have power back whether or not they have babies. I don't see women as baby machines. I see women, well, I'm just saying, some people see women's value as a, yeah, to me, women have rights if they never have a child. That has nothing, it is great that women can have children, but I see women's value as simply as another dignity being. But I was going to say is that to me, the issue of like, I was going to be a drug and alcohol counselor, and I'm not doing that now. I devoted myself now full time to what I'm doing because when I went to school and I realized that the school is teaching me their own stuff with all this bias. And I saw that if I want to stop bias, to argue with a few people, they're scholarly, is not going to do the job. What I need to do is try to change the world. And I thought, well, the first problem I'm going to have to do is expose religion. Because if I don't expose that all this is a lie, and how it's a lie, and how it's connected, and how, and if they're going to have the religions, that why are you choosing the most toxic to be the one you choose? If you're going to choose from like something like a car, you don't go out in the parking lot and choose the one that, you know, that's the jalopy. To me, these religions are toxic. But I see them all as toxic, but I see that it's a variance of toxic. Like some are extremely toxic.
Yeah. And it's interesting what you said about the bait machine thing, because women are so fed up now with men. They're saying now, I've read recently in some articles where women, there are some women that are saying that just having babies, they're equating like having babies and having the act of sex as being equal to rape and abuse.
Well, I don't agree with that.
I'm saying, but that's how fed up women are.
Well, I think that women have the right to feel fed up, that their bodies should not be used. I tell people, to me, women are people, not a hot product, which society doesn't see them as people generally. It's like more like it's a hot product we can use somehow, whether it's baby making or sex or just to sell products.
And this is where we come back to abortion, because for 4 million years, women were happy controlling their own lives, having children, raising children. But now, with this whole thing 2,000 years ago, where women are subjugated and silenced, now men are trying to force them to have children. And they're saying, hell no, we're going to get abortions. This is what I said earlier. We're going to get abortions. You can't force us to have your baby. First of all, you're not treating us right, and you're not treating us right, so I'm not giving you what you want, which is baby. And
also because women can't be taken care of, because it used to be that one person could work in the family, you know, whether it would be male or female, and that they could have survived. Now you can't even hardly survive with two people working.
Well, too many people are jet skiing, and nobody's working anymore.
Well, those people generally, to me, are rich, and they have someone else that's working for them.
Yeah, and the people in power are hoarding and gambling away our resources.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I'm an anarchist. I do not like government. Could be. If it was a government for the people, by the people, actually, which it is not, it has never been.
Right?
Never been. It's like, how could you say you're government for the people, but yet we have slaves and they're not people, and then we have women and they're also not people? It's like...
They're slaves now. We've turned into baby production slaves with abortion, trying to take abortion away from women. See? And imagine if there was no coin, Damien. Where is Jeff Bezos? I heard that he makes over 1,000 times the salary of the average Amazon
And you know what? To
employees.
me, it's a crime. I feel it's a crime. There's no way that anyone should make that much more than everyone else. That is immoral to me.
How many more people could be employed with all that extra money? But they're seeing that way. But if these executives were paid in corn and apples and grain, where are they going to store 1,000 times more? The bugs are going to all eat it, and it's all going to rot. You see, and this is why they invented coin, because coin doesn't rot. You see, and they can hoard it that way. But if everything is turned around and made it back the way it was for millions of years, these executives will get paid. You know, maybe you'll get 2 ears of corn.
Well, I don't. That's like primitivism. To me, that's not what I'm hoping for. What I'm hoping for is a just, ethical society that works together, that's egalitarian, that is in a sense more feminine. Not that I think it has to be that limited to that, because men could act reasonably. I don't know, be a gentleman, be a kind person, and no matter your gender.
Right?
I mean, you don't have to be a. So to me, it's really about us being kind. I have a saying that I say all the time, that we rise by helping each other, and I say it in every context because I feel that's the truth in almost every context. We wouldn't have science if we wouldn't have agriculture. We wouldn't have life if it wasn't working together.
And who teaches us to be kind, our mother or our father? Really? Our mother.
Yeah.
Our father is going to say, son, wow, good job. Our mother's going to be like, you know, you need to have some manners. How many times did your mother tell you you need to develop some manners?
Not as many times as my wife. But, you know, I appreciate it. If my wife wouldn't have told me, and in fact, speaking of this stuff, I've written on a board because I need to keep being told because it's not natural to me. But so this is what she wrote down. This is not to be mean. This is for I want to be better. So this is what she said. She said, nice behavior, nice language, nice voice. Don't assume. Right? Don't assume that I already know everything. Don't assume that other people understand me. Don't assume that to try to understand and ask, not assume. And the other thing to me is that
fathers will never tell us that. In a million years, our fathers will never tell us that. No father around the world will ever tell us that.
they should.
Our mothers are the only ones who tell us this. They
But-
should, but they can't.
But that's why I started to do this. I openly say stuff just like I say that don't allow anger to become an unethical behavior. Because I felt that is one of my biggest problems. Is I'm naturally extremely aggressive, and that's toxic, and I don't want to be toxic.
And you're lucky to have the wife that you have.
I am. She's
Yeah,
empathetic,
yeah.
and she's able to help me, and I want it to change. And so to me, I realized that empathy is thinking in another's thinking and trying to feel their feelings and then care about their experience.
Yeah. Thank God I only had sisters. I thank God I only had sisters. If there's a God, I thank God I only had sisters. It saved me so much trouble. It kept me out of trouble. If I had a stupid brother telling me all this junky stuff, oh my God, my life would be totally different.
Well, but now we can be men and tell other men, because to me, now our society is so male-based that, like, if my wife were to say the same stuff that I now say, people would not even listen to her, but they will listen to me. Because I am 6 foot, I weigh 400 something pounds. I'm aggressive, I'm tough, I look mean. But then I say, you know what?
You got a red beard.
I do. I'm a wild person. I paint my nails. But the point is, what I say is I tell people that the wisest thing I have ever done was be kind. It's also been one of the hardest things I've ever done. Because it's easy to be kind to those who are kind. But I tell people, character is seen in how we treat everyone. If you can treat people who you do not like with an ethical behavior, that it doesn't waver, that to me becomes someone of honor. That you are doing something, because just think, even Hitler could be nice to people that are nice to Hitler, but it's.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say, because growing up in San Diego, I mean, my best friend when I was 22, 23, 24, my best friend, he was white, and he had skinheads come over. I didn't know what skinheads were. You know,
I fought skinheads before.
Yeah, his family was pretty wealthy, but he knew a lot of people. And I remember these two skinhead guys who would always come over, and they were always nice to me. I didn't know like what they might have been doing outside of me, but I didn't know what a skinhead was. I didn't know what they were doing, but I know that they treated me with respect. And maybe it was only because I was Tim's friend.
Oh, I'm probably. But I'm from Los Angeles, so trust me. I was born in Long Beach, and I was raised in Orange County, I was 23 before I left California, so my whole time growing up was all California. So I know I've been shot at, I've been stabbed, I've been jumped by a gang when I was 13 at a zoo, but it was my fault.
Yeah.
Because at the zoo, I had these white guys, speaking of white people, but these fellow white friends, and they go, hey, let's call those Mexicans names. And I didn't care. I said, we're going to fight them. I just thought it would be fun to fight somebody. I didn't even, and so I said words I don't even know. But then I stood there to fight, and about 15 Mexican, come at me, and I stood there, and then I looked back, and all the white friends had left. And they didn't even tell me to leave. They left me standing there.
Wow.
And so all these Mexicans came, right? And I think I'm going to die. They hit me about 5 times, which I thought was actually less than they were going to do. And then they said, hey, will you help us get them? Tell them that we're gone and they'll come back and then we can beat them up. And I said, oh, I would love to do that. But that was actually a real turning point for me. That I didn't become racist and stuff. I think I turned the other way because after that they helped me, and I have had tons of people of color help me in my life, and my family.
This is my point. See, this is my point. I wouldn't want a skinhead to come up against me, right? But I am able to understand. I don't have to agree with what the skinhead is doing. But I can see what his plight is because nobody wants to go extinct. And they believe, and they're right, that they're going extinct.
Yeah, but I think that's a wrong mentality because if we see ourselves as a connected humanity, then we're not going extinct. I could care less about race to me. Race is, who cares?
Ethnocentrism is real. I mean,
I know it is.
You know that.
Oh, yes. Well, it's more common than racism is. Or just like racialism. You ever heard of that? That's where they're almost racist. It's like ethnocentric, like with steroids.
Yeah, right. So I can sympathize with their plight because I wouldn't want to go extinct either.
And again, I will say I do not sympathize because I see humanity as not a color, but as a human. That's it.
I understand that point, but I'm just saying, I'm a business consultant. I have to tell my clients, look, put yourself in the feet of the person you're negotiating with, the people that you want to do a licensing deal with you, the people who want to buy your product.
Well, there's a difference. You're saying understanding and sympathy. Those to me are not the same thing. I can understand that they feel that they're losing stuff. And I want to tell them, stop seeing yourself as a color and start seeing yourself as what you really are, which is a human. I mean, humans are 99% genetically the same. In fact, chimpanzees are more different in a sense than we are. So it's an illusion.
We're saying the same thing in different words.
I just hate that word sympathy. I do not feel sympathy for them at all. Nazis? Nope.
All right, but it's the women that I'm more concerned about.
Oh, I'm concerned about women. Women have a harder plight than most people in the world, no matter the country.
Right. And if the men go extinct, the women are going to go extinct also. I don't necessarily care about the men.
Yeah, but you just mean white women, and who cares? So whiteness goes away. Whiteness is only like 8,000, 9,000 years old anyways. The most of human history was not whiteness. So, okay, so the 8,000 and 9,000 goes extinct. Well, I don't know, most of human history, let's see, humans are about at least in Africa 350. So 350 minus 9,000, I'm not impressed. Who cares?
Damien, you get rid of the white-black thing. I'm saying, except for Africa, the heart of Africa, not North Africa, not South Africa.
Right.
But the heart of Africa, except for Africa, the rest of the population are going extinct.
No, I understand that. Like I said, the only thing you're just saying about the sympathy, and every time you say that, it's like it makes my skin crawl.
Okay, I'm not going to use that word again, but understand what I'm saying.
Yes, I understand.
Part of those people who are going extinct are women.
Oh, yes.
And I care about the women. The guys are the ones causing the problem.
All right, but I don't care that a specific color doesn't go extinct. Who cares?
It's not color. Yeah, it's not color. It's not
But I'm saying, so you're saying goes extinct. I'm just saying, like, what's an American? Is an American a white person? You know what? It's so sad. I was actually going to write a book before I started going into this stuff called Who Am I, American? Because I was a truck driver and I trained students, right, from other countries, other nationalities. And we were driving one time, and this Hispanic looks out the window and goes, "Oh, look, we're in Iowa or something. It said owned and operated by an American." And he goes, "Oh, see, that's a good place because they're usually run by Indians from India." And I said, don't think Indians are Americans?" I go, "See, so who do you think runs that place? You think an American runs it. Who's an American? Is it an African American runs that? Because I don't know what you mean. What do you mean?" He goes, "Oh, I guess." I said, "Is it a Hispanic?" He said, "No, it's a white person." I go, "You know what? That has to change. That has to change, that when we think American, we think white."
Yeah, and in terms of self-genocide and sub-replacement fertility, it doesn't matter who is in America. The culture of America is like the rest of the world outside of Africa.
Yeah.
Everybody here, Africans, Europeans, Indians, Asians, everybody is part of the population decline in America. It doesn't matter what color it is because it's the culture.
Oh, yeah, it's a culture thing. I agree.
Get rid of the fake Bible.
Yes, I'll agree with that too.
The problems be solved. See, everything go back to the natural way things are supposed to be. You don't have this fake, thing saying that women are supposed to, be at the foot of men. Let me ask you, when's the last time you saw a man give birth to a woman? They have this baloney in the Bible. Women came from men?
No, I know. I agree with that. I thought that was ridiculous too.
I never seen a man give birth to a woman. But you know what men are trying to do? Since men are being shut out by their women, and the women aren't having babies for them because of the way they're acting, now men are trying to develop artificial uteruses, and they're trying to get these things, and oh my God, they're going to find a way. But they're going to still need women's eggs unless they can get
Well, but there's also there's women that they can take the egg and actually make sperm out of it, out of the woman's own genetics also. So men, they can do that with a man. They can take a man's stuff and make it, that stuff doesn't. That's just science. That doesn't bother me. What I don't want is a harmful use of science, because I think that science can be used in a very harmful way.
Yeah, why can't they just treat women right? Why can't they just let women be women?
They should do that no matter the science. No matter if they make fake uteruses or whatever. I don't care if men can give birth. It was still is a need for everyone to be treated ethically. Men, women, to me, there's no difference. I see it as simply dignity beings. In other words, dignity to me is something that is worthy of value. That we are worthy of value, all of us. And and I don't mean about being colorblind. Some people get this confused. I do see color. I'm not saying I'm blind to it. I'm saying the value of the quality of who we are as a humanity. When we start seeing all of us as valuable, all of us. Like some people go like, well, oh, I don't want to buy that from India, or I don't want to good efforts come from Africa. Like, what? What is the difference? As long as the quality of the workmanship or something is good, what is it? But we have too much systemic racism, and that racism can not be limited to just, as you said, just to even white people. It becomes an American racism. I'm telling you, I had this one guy, right? He said he hated African Americans, hated them. He hated people of color. I found out he was Native American. He was from Florida, actually lived out in huts and stuff, didn't even live in, and yet he hated, African Americans. And I explained to him how ridiculous that was. And it was funny because he started to become less racist. And then he said he was so happy to say, you know what, I realized you were right. I said, you've been programmed by America to hate people of color. And you're a person of color. How much more insane? But you know what? The Bible does that, like you said. Women are taught to hate other women. They're taught to hate themselves.
Yeah.
So my thing is to empower people regardless. And I do agree with you that way needs to be more feminine. I'm sorry, guys. It's not that I'm trying to be pro-women. For me, it's that I see that we have to be kind, we have to help, we have to nurture, or we're not going to have a flourishing society. We're not going to have one that's worth wanting. It's like, it reminds me of, it's not one we want to write home about. If we don't have a society where we're all actually treated well, it's not something to be proud of.
And that's the great thing about when I read real translations of ancient texts. I see that everybody was just happy to be working and eating.
Yeah.
And that's really what people really need to be focused with. Like all this stuff, oh my God. I mean, just stuff. I mean, even as a product development consultant, even with somebody who has my own products on the market, I mean, there are certain things that I literally, 99% of my concepts, I may even build a prototype, but I will never put it on the market. I mean, because either the detachable baby carrier, I developed that, and my aunt wanted to invest in it, and I told her, this was way before they even existed. I told her no. I mean, because people are not going to connect. There's going to be a certain percentage of people who will not connect that baby carrier to the stroller properly. And sometimes you see people struggling with them, and the baby will fall out and get injured or die. Or I said, I don't want to be responsible for that. So books for me is something easy because nobody's maybe in a library the books might fall over, but generally speaking, I can write books. And,
I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
But other things, I don't want to do any transportation vehicles. Because look at all the people die. I mean, car manufacturers they're not going to jail for murder. They're not going to prison for all the people.
But see, they probably, some of them should. I mean, seriously, if you put out something that people, knowing it's going to harm people, and people get harmed, how is that not a crime that deserves to be put in jail?
They're a corporation, they have immunity.
Well, corporations seem to have immunity anyways. They can a person that knocks off a piece of gum at a store can have more time, than a person that steals $10,000 through a white collar crime.
Exactly.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's all tilted in the wrong direction, but
not for the people.
It's not getting us anywhere. Right, and it's not getting us anywhere, and we've basically killed off the environment. So our time is, the clock is ticking, and
it is.
And it's going to be all over. And thank you, men.
Well, it's been good talking to you. Do you have anything in closing remarks, or you wanted to share before we end it?
No, I'm praying that women will continue rising up and
I agree with that.
doing what they're doing and take take over this world, please, soon.
All right, well,
While there's still time.
I appreciate it. I had a real fun time, and
Great conversation.
right on.